right, welcome everybody to the rare, mythic, and bonus sheet set review for Eldraine, Wilds of Eldraine. That's what the set's called. We are here once again, back from yesterday. We were recording the commons and uncommons. Today we're here with the rest of the set. Back again with Mark. Mark, how you doing on day 2 of our set review so far?
I spent a lot of time today presenting at work, so my voice is starting to fade a little bit, but I am yet again extremely thankful to be invited here. It's an absolute blast every time I join these, especially considering you do 95% of the work. So thank you so much for having me, and looking forward to hopefully many more.
Yeah, we're, don't worry, I'm a professional talker at this point, so if you need to rest your voice, I'll read the majority of the cards here. We are going to be doing a good number of cards, actually, because the bonus sheet adds, I think, 45 cards, so it's going to be a little bit longer than your typical rare or mythic set review. We're going to get to those at the end, by the way. The order that we're going in is roughly the same as yesterday, although we're doing the gold cards last instead of first this time around. We're starting with white, starting with the cheapest cards, going up. I think that's mostly it to cover. Anything else about the rares and mythics before we jump in?
Yeah, so maybe we'll just kind of talk about what I look for when we do the rares and mythics.
Yeah, for sure.
A lot of times you're going to see the type of rare that pushes an already well-supported archetype that's prevalent in like tons of commons and uncommons and just makes those cards better. And then you also see, hopefully, at least some of the more interesting ones that kind of pull you in a lesser represented direction that gives your draft some replayability when you're ideally forced to take some cards that are maybe normally taken later in the pack become better because of a particular rare. So I expect today we'll see plenty of cards that support some of the themes today that we saw yesterday. Those being things like the tokens that were being made, the rats and the knights, those being the bargain cards, and those being celebration and the rolls as well. So we saw a little bit of all of that. And if you can bear with me, I thought we'd take a minute and maybe recap some of that if we can.
Yeah, absolutely. You also had, you're saying before we jumped on, a few additional thoughts on just some of the mechanics and how they might play out. So I think it's good to frame that first before we jump to the rare. So this is your time to use all of your voice energy. So this, if you're gonna burn it all, burn it now. And yeah, we'll cross the Mark needs to talk bridge when we come to it later.
Yeah. So the thing I find interesting about this set, which we alluded to a bit yesterday, but we couldn't really expand on because it took forever before we saw the first bargain card in our set review,
Yeah.
is that both bargain and rolls have, in effect, diminishing returns, because the first bargain card you cast in any given game is going to sacrifice the card that you're most happy to bargain away. And then the second bargain card is going to be the second most happy card you're happy to bargain away. And the more and more bargain cards you have, the less likely there is that there's something that you're fine just sacrificing to bargain. Right?
Yep. That makes sense to me.
So in a sense, on one side of things, there's this tension saying you probably want some amount of bargain, but you don't want to be expecting you can just bargain every single time.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then the flip side of that, which already makes this interesting, is we saw some of the cards yesterday. There's a couple of enchantments, the one that makes the 2/2 knight and the one that makes you discard a card, or your opponent discard a card and lose 2 life, that are really good bargain fodder. And then today we're also going to see hatching plans. And so conversely, a card like hatching plans, where it does nothing unless you have bargain, is really pushing you towards playing more of those types of cards.
Definitely.
So I'm already somewhat interested in the tension between those sides, where if you see like a pack 3 hatching plans, it might really shift the cards that are going to be in your main deck compared to your sideboard, and you might kind of need to reevaluate how highly you prioritize an ability like bargain. And to a lesser extent, you see a little bit of that on the rolls as well, where we talked about the fact that there's only a limited number of good targets for your rolls. Because if you have a board of 4 creatures and they're all different sizes, then the roll that you cast there, when you can choose exactly what size you want to buff, is going to be fantastic. But if you only have 1 creature, or if you only have 1 creature that doesn't have a roll on it already, then drawing your next roll card is going to be way less impactful and not really open up as many attacks as the first one might. So there's also some tension there in regards to not wanting to max out on roll cards and bargain cards. So I just wanted to frame that as our reference point when we're looking at some of the rares here, because some of the rares might also do that in terms of pushing you to play more or less of those card types.
Yeah, that's a great way to frame it, and I think that's kind of a contrast to what ended up being the best mechanic in Lord of the Rings, Tempting, because when you had tempt cards in your deck, you're like, I want more and more and more. There wasn't really an upward ceiling there. I think it's going to be a little bit different for those mechanics, for bargaining and rolls. There's going to be a little bit more push and pull, like you said, a little bit of tension. So it's going to be interesting to see as we dive into these rares and mythics. All right, before we jump into our cards, I want to give the Patreon a quick shout out. Patreon.com/limitedlevelups. If you like today's show, you feel like you learned something, got you a little more prepared for the coming format, go check it out. It helps really keep the show, keep going, supports the show. There's a bunch of reward tiers over there that we want to get back to you to help you get better at limited magic, ranging from coaching to Discord help to deck techs, all that good stuff. Go check it out if you're interested in supporting the show or leveling up your game. Without further ado, get into our first card here, starting with white, starting with the lowest mana value of cards we have, and this is Regal Bunicorn. This is 1 and a white for a star creature at rare. It's a rabbit unicorn, very funny. Regal Bunicorn's power and toughness are equal to the number of non-land permanents you control. Okay, this is a cool one.
Yeah, and it counts itself.
Yeah.
So right off the bat, you see the most rectangle matters cards ever, because every rectangle is just +1/+1.
So usually, or sometimes I should say, we see this effect at 3 mana, like on a 3 mana creature that'll say, I'm as big as many creatures as you have, right? Scion of the Wilds was like a really old card. There was Odrix something from 5, 6, 7 years ago, and that was similar. And those cards tend not to be great because they kind of have that House of Card effects where it's like, okay, I'm a 3/3 or a 2/2 when I come down. Maybe I get a little bit bigger after. But then if you kill my creature, you shrink it in combat. There's a little bit room for a blowout. I think with the Bunicorn here, much less likely that's going to happen, just counting all of your non-land permanents. Not only that, I'm not, forget about the blowout situation that this doesn't have as much of. It's just going to get massive. It's a whole mana less than we usually see this effect for, and counts so much more stuff. So I think your opponent's going to play a Regal Bunicorn on turn 2, and you're going to be like, oh no, like I need to answer that right away. And sometimes you're going to have like red and green removal that this just outscales too quickly, and you actually can't get it. So I'm going to be pretty high. It's a very adorable card, but I also think a very strong card as well.
Yeah, and you're just going to be praying your opponent doesn't have a monster roll for this thing, because it's not that hard to give it basically +2/+2 on trample.
Wow, yeah, that's a really nice combo. So we're gonna land on this Bunicorn here. I'm thinking B+.
Yeah, I was in the B+, A- range, and I think B+ is safe.
Cool. Yeah, I think on turn 2 it's gonna be quite good, and even late in the game, you're gonna just plop down a 2 mana 6/6 or 7/7 a lot of the time.
Yeah, you know what? I will go with A-. You just convinced me with saying the number 6 and just not thinking that's ridiculous just made me change it to A-.
Yeah, I think that's going to happen a lot of the games you play. Next up, we've got Spellbook Vendor. So this is 1 and a white for a 2/2 human peasant at rare. It's got vigilance, and it says at the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 1. When you do, you create a sorcerer role token attached to target creature you control.
Yeah, and it can target itself, unlike some of the other effects like this we've seen. So it being able to grow on turn 3 or later on, and having the flexibility to move that around. I almost kind of see it as like a Siege Veteran type card, where you can grow your creatures, although you can't put more than one of them on the same creature to grow them. There might still be spots where you want to do that to trigger the enchantment leaves play cards that white and black have.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point. You can just keep doing that. So, yeah, this is when I first saw this card, I was like, oh, it's like we've seen a lot of not better, not worse, but different. It's a different Siege Veteran, Lunarch, Aspirant kind of cards. I think it compares, I think, ever so slightly unfavorably, because the really busted thing about those cards is you just didn't have to keep paying mana. You could keep casting your cards on curve, and your things would just keep getting bigger and bigger. Also, you can't obviously stack with these. You can't go, okay, just keep making my 2/2 into a 3/3, 4/4, 5/5. But you're making up for that by the fact that you're creating enchantments every turn. You're making it permanent. You're growing your Regal Bunicorn. You're so lucky to have the combo of those two. So on balance, I think it's still going to be a fantastic card, and I would put this one in the A range as well.
Oh yeah, I wrote down B+ for this. What do you want to give this?
Yeah,
one?
I kind of flipped in the last one. I was just going to give it an A-.
Okay, fair enough.
Cool. Yeah, this one looks really strong. Next up, we've got A Tale for the Ages. This is 1 and a white for enchantment at rare. Enchanted creatures you control get +2/+2. So a build around of sorts.
Yeah, this one I've got a tough time pinning down. Because on average, if you're giving half of your creatures +2/+2, it's fairly similar in strength to like a Glorious Anthem giving all of your creatures +1/+1.
Mm-hmm.
Then you need to have the combination of creatures, rolls, and this card all kind of lining up well together.
Right.
Which in some sets would be a really high bar to clear. In this set, it's only maybe a medium bar to clear.
Yeah, I think the fact that there are a lot of creatures that just, when I say a lot, I do mean a good handful of creatures that just bring a roll along with them. So for example, there was the 3-mana 2/3 that came on give a roll to something. Well, that's going to give +3/+3 instead of +1/+1, right? So I agree that this is a card that you have to kind of have the right deck for. It's not always going to come together. Your draw isn't going to be perfect, but I also think it's not going to be that hard to do. I think with, I keep shouting at this number at 6, 7, 8, 9 things that bring rolls, this card is going to be a good build around.
Yeah, I was actually I wrote down my grade, and I think we need to give this a build around grade.
I think so too.
You just have to.
Yeah.
I gave it a build around A-.
Yep, that's exactly what I was going to do too. So, sweet. So,
okay.
We are very in tune so far. And next up we've got another kind of funny one. 3 Blind Mice. This is 2 and a white for a saga at rare. 4 chapters. The first chapter is create a 1/1 white mouse creature token. Chapter 2 and Chapter 3 are create a token that's a copy of target token you control. Chapter 4, creatures you control get +1/+1 and gain vigilance until end of turn.
Yeah, I don't know where the third mouse went, because you're only getting 2 of them, but...
Well, no, you make a mouse, and then you can... The second ability has 2 chapters, right? So you go, make a mouse in 1.
Oh, it's 2 and 3.
Yeah, 2 and 3.
I totally missed that.
Yeah.
Okay, that changes this card. Yeah, I just read it as chapters 1, 2, and 3. So thank you for pointing that out. That's where the blind mice was me not reading the card. This card is good if you get to activate the second and third chapters, but if your opponent casts ironically enough like a rat out, and you never get to copy anything, it's not going to happen often, but you're going to feel really bad.
Yeah, I wouldn't even go as far as to say it's not going to happen often. I think it's going to happen with some regularity, that you just play this on 3 and your opponent next turn goes, all right, well, that's the only token they have. Now, mind you, that's kind of the nice thing, is that if you do have other tokens, it's not like they can prevent this, right? You're going to maybe get another roll, or maybe you get a rat token if you happen to have that. It doesn't just key off this. At the same time, though, that does just mean, once again, just another hoop to jump through for this card to reach its ceiling. So I think this is a solid card, because even if they do kill that first mouse, you're not unlikely to have another token, and that last ability, your creatures get +1/+1 in vigilance, that's not nothing either. But we're gonna, I think, give a lower grade to this one than the other 3 we've seen so far.
Yeah, like the dream curve is turn 2, play the Valorous, whatever, where you get a 2/2 knight with vigilance, and then you get to make 2 more knights with this.
That's really
which
good.
is common, so it's not going to be that hard to do. But yeah, you got to balance that with the fact that if this is your only token, you also just you can't block with it.
Right. Yeah.
Even if they attack with a 3/1, you just can't take the trade, because you're just losing 2 more permanents that are also going to grow. So yeah, this is probably somewhere in the B range for me.
Yeah, I was going to give it a B-, because I think that the times that you do, and as much as we were kind of cautioning against sometimes the mouse gets killed out from under you, there are going to be times that they just don't have that interaction spell, and making 3 1/1s over the course of a few turns and then pumping the team, that's going to be strong. If this always played out how you're hoping it plays out, it would be a B+ level card. But I do think it has to get a knock, and I'm going to give it a C-. Or sorry, a B-. So I'll join you in that B range. Next up, we've got Werefox Bodyguard. This is 1 white for a 2/2 flash at rare. It says when Werefox Bodyguard enters the battlefield, exile up to 1 other target non-fox creature until Werefox Bodyguard leaves the battlefield. This is a fox itself, by the way. And also has an ability, 1 and a white, you can sacrifice Werefox Bodyguard, you gain 2 life. So we've got kind of a, Banisher Priest, more recently, the 1/4 from New Phyrexia kind of did this, but it has flash, right? These kind of cards are really nice generally, but flash adds another dimension to it.
Yeah, I think there's only, I might be wrong about this, but I think there's only one other fox in the set,
Okay.
which is the green 4/3 with trample that adventure instant speed makes a monster roll token.
Okay. Good
That
to know.
thing's definitely a fox. But this will hit 99% of the creatures in the set, I believe.
Yeah, what do you make of the last ability there? Sacrifice the bodyguard, you gain 2 life.
It's like a really weird one.
It is. I think.
It's
Yeah,
it's
yeah, good.
mostly irrelevant. It's just a way to make your opponents feel worse for pointing removal at it, I guess.
That's basically what
But
yeah, that's what I'm thinking the idea is behind it too. It's like, okay, at least you get a little something if you got 2 mana. It's not like you can do the trick where you go like cast it, sack it on the stack of the trigger. It doesn't have that wording that some of the old versions of this card does. Like Journey to Nowhere
yeah,
can't do that. But whatever. That's fine. This is a good card. This is quite a strong card.
yeah, I'm less interested in these types of effects because they're very glass cannony.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need everything to work. Like it's very fragile. If you're got their 6/6 trample on lock with this, then any shock just gives them a flash 6/6 trample. But it's still going to be a very good card.
Right. And actually, now that I'm thinking about this, just thinking about the situations, I think the idea here is, with that last ability, is you can target your own things and then sacrifice it if you just want like a expensive blink effect, essentially, right? That's a little bit of modality there. That's another way you can use it.
Sure, we'll go with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's part of the card. You're going to do it some amount of the time, right? You blink your big giant creature that's had a pacifism or whatever on it. Anyways, I'm going to give this one an A- as well.
Okay. Yeah. It's A minus is probably fair for
Yeah,
this.
I think Flash just really puts it over the top. You can blow it a
Oh
combat
yeah,
trick or a double
Flash
block.
is huge on this. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, next up, we got Archon of the Wild Rose. This is 2 white for another rare. It's a 4/4 flyer, and it says other creatures you control that are enchanted by auras you control have base power and toughness 4/4 and have flying. Oh my goodness, that's a lot of
Holy
stats.
smokes! There's a lot of layering rules interactions in this set, eh? Between making things 1/1s and 4/4s and
Oh,
rolls and
yeah.
pump spells.
I didn't even think about that. Yeah, we're gonna have to brush up on our layers rules knowledge. Man,
But this thing is insane.
so a lot of the time this is going to come down and immediately have an effect. It's going to make something into a 4/4 flyer plus the roll on top of it, so it's going to be a 5/5 most of the time. Like this, it's not turning things into 4/4s, it's turning things into a 5/5. And of course, if there's counters involved, which there is not a lot of that in the set, it's even bigger. But yeah, this card is quite strong. Just all these white cards we've seen so far have been quite strong.
I was thinking this is just a straight A.
Yeah, I think so too. A, not A plus, because it does just die, right? It's not like super resilient or anything, but it's really impactful. I wonder. Chat was saying this, and I'm wondering how this works. If you put a cursed roll on your own creature, what happens there? That's a layering thing. I'm not sure. We'll figure it out later.
I saw that in chat and purposely avoided mentioning it. So
Just something to
thanks
think
for
about.
setting us up for failure now, Alex.
That's all I can think about. Next up, we've got Expel the Interlopers. This is 3 white for a sorcery at rare. Choose a number between 0 and 10. Destroy all creatures with power greater than or equal to the chosen number. So kind of a modular wrath, and often we'll see these modular wraths be quite a bit stronger than just 4 mana or 5 mana destroy all creatures. Anytime you can engineer a situation where you keep your creatures and they don't keep theirs, that's a recipe for a really good card. We saw, Farewell is a really good example. I don't think this card is close to as good as Farewell, but it's the same kind of idea.
Yeah, it's not like that far off of Farewell. It's a mana less and has a similar amount of overlap.
Mm-hmm.
I want to say like A minus.
Yeah, so often I agree with that grade too. Often what's going to happen is you're playing a white deck, your things are going to be a little bit smaller than your opponents. You've got a 2/2, 3/3. And sometimes you're just going to be like, all right, kill your big stuff, and I keep all my small stuff. And I think white is the right color for that. So keep that in mind. It's going to play a little bit awkwardly like your green-white deck that's playing to buff a bunch of stuff. But even still, I think you're going to find some good spots for it. Next up, we've got a Mythic here, Virtue of Loyalty. So this is a Mythic cycle. They're all enchantments with instant. I think so. Some of them are sorcery, some of them are instant adventures. So Virtue of Loyalty is enchantment at Mythic, 3 white. The actual enchantment side says at the beginning of your end step, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, untap those creatures. And then the adventure side, Ardent Fealty, 1 and white for an instant, Create a 2/2 white knight token with vigilance. Wow.
Yes, things insane.
Busted. Yeah, like the give me the front side, like the 5 mana side. I'm like, okay, like there's some games I can imagine where you're just a little bit behind. This isn't quite enough to either catch you up or put you ahead, but that like you're gonna have a cut 2/2 every single time when you have this card in your opening hand. It self solves for that problem. So this card is really good.
Yeah, I like this is somewhere between an A and an A plus.
Right. Yeah.
I'll let you pick the actual.
Yeah, I think I'm going to lean towards A plus. I think there's just enough going on. What my slight reservation is that your opponent's gonna know the enchantment is coming because you adventured this, and if they have an enchantment interaction spell or just something that can kill a non-land permanent, they're gonna save that. They're gonna set that up, right? And that's not the worst thing in the world, obviously. But I still think that it's when it goes right, it goes right, and you're gonna win. And I don't think it's gonna go super wrong very often. So I'll give
Well,
it some
you can
plus.
you can turn 4 end step the adventure and then
True.
untap and play
Yeah,
5.
that's very true, man. All right, yeah, this is great. So will you join me, or are you gonna be A?
I
Okay,
said A or
cool.
A plus, and I'll just join you on A plus.
Great. Next up, we've got Moonshaker Cavalry. This is another mythic. 5 white, white, white for a 6/6 Spirit Knight. It's got flying, so 8 mana, 6/6 flyer. And when a very familiar trigger, if you've been playing Cube, when Moonshaker Cavalry enters the battlefield, creatures you can control gain flying and get +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures you control. So this is a white, color-shifted Craterhoof Behemoth, essentially.
Yeah, it's still it might even be better at ending the game than
Yeah,
Craterhoof.
most likely.
Like if you only have 2 other creatures, your 2 creatures each get +3/+3 and flying.
That's a lot.
And that's 2 creatures.
And then you have a massive creature.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
It does cost 8, including triple white.
Right.
So that's not something you can ignore. But there's a lot of green ramp in the set. I don't think it's going to be like that hard.
yeah, I think you definitely need to. This is sort of a not a build around quite, but you have to make some concessions to it in the sense that when this is in your deck, and most of your white decks are just not going to be designed to get to 8 mana every game. So, like you said, you think you have to be green white, or you have to be playing maybe like a black white attrition deck where you're just gumming up the ground and cavalry's going to come down eventually and win the game. But that being said, in those kind of decks, it's going to end the game pretty much every single time.
Yeah, like when you cast something that costs 8, it needs to win the game on the spot.
Yeah.
But it does.
Yeah, this one does. So,
Uh,
do you want to give it a build around, or do you want to just give it like a, our words kind of point towards where, you have to be careful about it? I don't know. What do you feel about this one?
I think I can just give this like an A minus.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I think assuming you're in a deck that is good for it, you're not like a red-white 16 land aggro deck. And, when you have I often say, when you have 4s and 5s, in your like red-white kind of aggressive deck, you don't want to cut lands very often. You definitely aren't going to be cutting lands when you got this card in your deck. You need to play 17, so just be aware of that. Okay, so that's white. We're moving on to actually one thing I wanted to reiterate that you said yesterday is that the set is balanced, quote unquote, in some ways, intentionally or unintentionally, by the fact that yesterday we didn't like white that much, but all those white rares were very good. Like the lowest grade we gave was in the B range, right? So that's gonna draw, and that's good. That is good draft. It's just good for the draft format in general because it just means white's not gonna be a color people ignore. Sometimes you open that the virtue of loyalty and you move in even if white ends up being not the best color. So
yeah, there was like from my side, I gave 1B, 1B plus, and everything else was in the A range. So
yeah. We got blue up next, Ingenious Prodigy. So it says X and a blue for an 0/1 rare. It's got Skulk. Wow, Skulk's back. Okay, so for those who don't know Skulk, it's the Ring Bearer ability. The first time, it says this creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. It says Ingenious Prodigy enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. At the beginning of your upkeep, if Ingenious Prodigy has 1 or more +1/+1 counters on it, you can remove one of them, and if you do, draw a card. So let's give an average case scenario here. Let's do this for X = 4. So you're paying 4 mana for a 3/4 Skulk that can slowly get smaller and draw cards.
yeah, well, X would equal 3 in that case.
Sorry,
But yeah.
yes, yeah, X = 3. My bad.
Yeah, X equals 3, you get a 3/4, and then the next turn it's a 2/3 that draws a card, and the next turn it's a 1/2 that's drawn 2 cards, and then it's an 0/1 that's drawn 3 cards.
Yeah, and sometimes you're gonna play this as a Nah, not very often actually. I was gonna say sometimes you play it early. I mean, you're going to sometimes. You're gonna play it on 2 if you've got next turn. You're setting up for a roll, like that green creature we just mentioned a second ago that puts a 3-drop that puts a roll on somebody you control. You're gonna run it out sometimes, but I think the sweet spot for this is gonna be around that like x equals 3, x equals 4 kind of range. I mean, the more the better, honestly. But that's where
You could run it for X equals 1 if you have the white common that like bounces a permanent you have.
Yeah, that's true. That's a great point.
It'd be a nice curve.
Yes.
You just know like someone added Skulk like right at the end of the design file. They're like, oh, this is such a cute ability on this card.
Absolutely. You're totally right. So this is not an over the top card. It's a solid one. I think it's worse than the white cards we've seen so far. I would give this still a B minus though.
Yeah, that's what I wrote down as well. Actually,
yeah, just a nice little card. Next up, we've got Sleep Cursed Fairy. This is an interesting one. A single blue mana for a rare fairy wizard. It's a 3/3. So 1 mana 3/3. You know there's going to be some downsides. It's flying and ward 2. Okay, that's not the downside. The downside is it enters the battlefield tapped with 3 stun counters on it, and you can pay 1 and a blue to untap Sleep Cursed Fairy, which of course just means you can remove one of the stun counters, or give it vigilance if it doesn't have any stun counters.
Yeah. Worth noting, you cannot surprise people by being like, "Haha, I'm untapping it."
Yes.
It just removes the stun counter.
Exactly. So this is a funky one. What do you make of it?
I don't hate it, just because it's so cheap.
Yeah, for sure. It's
like if this cost 2 mana, even if it was like a 2 mana like 5/5, I think I would like it a lot less.
Right.
But just being 1 mana, you can just like sneak it in either turn 1 or early on, and then even as like a super late game top deck, you'll have more mana to throw into it, so it's not just going to be a blank.
Right. You draw this later. It's not going to be a bad card. Like it's a flying ward 2 creature. You're going to have the mana to wake it up essentially at that point, and your opponent's going to have to answer this most of the time. And you play this on turn 1. You kind of think of this as suspend in a lot of ways if you've played with that mechanic, right? You play it on turn 1. It only comes, it's only relevant or comes into play after a few turns. And I think if you just looked at this card as 1 mana, suspend 3, 3/3 flyer, ward 2, untap, I think you would think that's a pretty good card. So it's a funky card, but I think it's a good one.
It's a spend 4, right? Because the first 3 turns remove the stun counters.
Right, that's true.
So, yeah. But you can accelerate that. So I don't, again, this kind of similar to the last one. I think this card's fine, but it's definitely not anywhere near the A range.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to give this a C+.
Yeah, I think that sounds reasonable.
Cool. Next up, we've got Extraordinary Journey. So this is XX blue for an enchantment at rare. When Extraordinary Journey enters the battlefield, exile up to X target creatures. You may, for each of those cards, its owner may play it for as long as it remains exiled. Whenever 1 or more non-token creatures enters the battlefield, if 1 or more of them entered from exile or was cast from exile, you draw a card. This ability triggers only once a turn, and for those folks who aren't that familiar with XX, that basically just means you have to pay, whatever you're putting into X, you have to pay that for each X. So if you want this to be 1, you have to pay X, 1 for each of the X's. So 2 blue for X equals 1, 4 blue for X equals 2. So we're just looking at this as if you just cast it for 4 mana, you're going to exile 1 creature. Your opponent can then recast it, and then you draw a card when they cast it.
Well, okay, isn't it? It's just like way better than that, isn't it? Like way better.
Yeah. So I'm giving a baseline, but yeah, you can feel free to expand.
Well, because it triggers off both you and your opponent's casting adventures.
Right. Yes, definitely. That is the joke here.
Yeah. So if you're, as long as it's a creature, right? Because like the virtue we saw won't trigger this, the white virtue. But yeah, if your opponent casts an adventure in the instant and then casts the creature, you're going to draw a card, and if you do that, you're going to draw a card as well.
Compare this to Johan's Stopgap that we looked at yesterday, the 4 mana bargain, bounce something, draw a card. It's very similar to that, where if your opponent, whenever they recast it, you're going to just, you bounce it, and then whenever they recast it, you draw the card, so it's on a bit of delay. But obviously it has that great upside, and the upside of sometimes you cast it for 6 too. So I think this
Yeah,
card's
so
quite good.
the other nice thing about this is if you just cast it for X equals 1 on turn 4, you're
Mm-hmm.
more likely to get more value from the bottom ability.
Yep.
If you cast it later in the game, like X equals 3 or 4, then you're just resetting your opponent back to square zero.
Yeah. Funny card. What grade do you like for this one?
I, I have a question though.
Yeah.
If you exile one of your opponent's creatures on the board and that creature has an adventure,
Oh
can they
gosh.
cast the spell side?
Whenever one or more non-token creatures enters the battlefield. Oh, sorry. First, let's see. Can they cast the spell side? I think so. I believe they can cast the adventure. Yes.
Yeah, I think so. And then it would just stay exiled and then
Yep.
go to yeah. So that is a bit of a knock on it because you're giving them back their 2-for-1s.
Mm-hmm.
But oh, adventure is from hand. Who knows? I don't know if chat's gonna be able to correct us on that, but that isn't really going to drastically change
No.
the rating of the card. I think this thing's good. I want to give it like B minus.
Yeah, I was gonna just go B. I think it's
Okay.
solid but not busted. There's gonna be some games you feel like it's really busted, but there's also gonna be some games where it's just a little bit clunky. You can't afford to spend 4 mana to just bounce something. So yeah, I'll go B on this one.
Okay.
We've got Talion's Messenger next up. This is 2 and a blue for a 1/3 at rare. It's a fairy noble with flying. So we got 3 mana for a 1/3 flyer. And it also says whenever you attack with one or more fairies, including this one, draw a card, then discard a card. When you discard a card this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target fairy you control.
Yeah, there's been a lot of cards that don't block too great, but do pretty well if you're able to untap and start doing things with them. And a lot of those cards are blue.
Yeah, definitely. And this one can have an immediate impact, though, right? If you have a fairy that you've played on 1 or 2, you're going to get that immediate loot trigger. You're going to get that immediate counter, which is very good. And unlike some of those other blue creatures we saw, this one only costs 3. So I think the barrier to entry for being like, all right, you have to untap with it, it's a little bit lower, certainly. This reminds me of Rafine a little bit. I know it's not as powerful as Rafine Scheming Seer, but it's got that same kind of vibe where it's just like, the rich keep getting richer because you're attacking, you're looting, you're getting bigger, which in a good way. It sounds like I'm framing it in a bad way, but that it's a very snowbally card. And I think that the fact that the snowball's so hard means that you're accepting of the fact that you're playing a 3-mana 1/3.
So how happy are you with this if you have 0 other fairies?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think you would still play it. I think you're going to put it in your deck. I think you would say, if I'm giving it a no fairy grade, I think it would be a C plus at that point. Maybe even a B minus. I think I might even bump it to B minus. And then with fairies in your deck, I don't know how much exactly it bumps it up because no, you're not every time you're going to have a fairy on 2 and this on 3, right? You're sometimes you're just gonna be like, this is still just your 3-drop no fairies in hand. So I don't think it actually affects my grade too much, to be honest. It's just a nice bonus if you do have fairies. I'm gonna give this one a B. I think that it's going to be a huge. It's gonna be a prop. It's gonna be something your opponent has to answer, and even when they do answer it, untap and answer it, as long as it's not just right away, you're probably gonna have gotten some value. Loot away some lands or loot to some lands if you need those.
Yeah, you've talked me into a B.
Sweet, cool. Next up, we got Farsight Ritual. 2 blue for an instant with bargain at rare. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. If this spell was bargained, look at the top 8 cards instead. Put 2 of them in your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's like it's the child of like Dig Through Time and Memory Deluge in a lot of ways, right? With a little bargain spin.
This is a card where I don't want to sacrifice material for. Like, just to look at an extra 4 cards is not worth a rectangle.
No, but I do think you're going to do that if you draw this in the late game, right? There's most likely looking at 4 extra cards is going to be worse than keeping around whatever your worst bargainable permanent is, I would imagine.
That's fair, yeah.
On turn 4,
yeah,
though,
so like not on turn 4,
Yeah.
but like more likely on turn 8. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the bargain text on all these cards, you can't ignore the bargain text on any of them, but it is worth saying just like don't assume you're always going to bargain them.
Absolutely. So these effects tend to be solid. Dig Through Time and Memory Deluge to have those analogs. Those were always, somewhere in the B-ish range. And I think this is about the same. I think this is probably actually a little bit worse than those cards, both of them. I would give Farsight Ritual a C plus.
Yeah.
Just a good
that
draw
sounds
spell.
reasonable to me.
Yeah. Next one. So this next one is I'm curious to hear what you have to say about it. Asinine Antics. 2 blue for a sorcery at Mythic. You can cast Asinine Antics as though it had flash if you pay 2 more to cast it. For each creature your opponents control, create a cursed roll token attached to that. And since this is a new day, I think it's worth reading out the rolls each time we see them for the first time. The cursed roll is the one that makes one of your opponent's creatures, or any creature, but likely you're going to put on your opponent's, a 1/1. So you've got.
Yeah, this is one where we're probably going to give it the wrong grade no matter what we give it.
I love that. Yeah, it's a funky card to evaluate. So basically, let's just think of how this is going to play out in most games when you have it in your opening hand. You play a 2 mana card, they play a 2 mana card. You play a 3, they play a 3. Maybe you even play a 4, they play a 4. Let's just say on turn 5 you've got this. You could cast 2 spells or this, make all their things into 1/1s. Is that a good thing for you?
Well, like, why aren't any of those creatures trading ever?
Right. That's one of the things I'm thinking, right? It's not like the board's
Yeah.
going to stall out. Like the time I can see this card being awesome is a board stall, right? This is going to break board stalls because it's just a big impactful effect. Your opponent's going to the board will no longer be stalled because your opponent can't block very well, right? And of course, in the very late game, you can do it at flash most likely. So I think the average case for this card in your opening hand is actually pretty poor. I think that most of the time this card isn't going to have the effect you want in the game, which is just like, oh, my stuff is great and your stuff sucks. I think where this excels is when you've drawn it a bit later and, maybe it's not a board stall, but the game's gone on for a little bit. You've got some stuff, they've got some stuff. Maybe one creature is getting on each side and then you go, nope, all your stuff is small now. That's a good use case for it. And of course, if you do ever get to that board stall situation, I'm a fan. But I think in today's limited landscape, it's really hard for me to justify a card that isn't good in your opener. Now, this might be good enough, right? I'm not saying you can't have a card that's not good in your opener. There are definitely cards that are good enough. I'm just wondering if this is the case.
Yeah, there's also, like, this doesn't do anything against a lot of cards. Like, your opponent's going to have rats in play. They're going to have ginger brutes. They're going to have 1/1 fairies. And this literally doesn't do anything against those. Like, it doesn't change the abilities. They're still going to have whatever rolls they have on them.
Right.
And there's multiple cards that make, two bodies. I'm not that, like, it's kind of like a slightly better version of that white fog we saw yesterday, where you really need to have like 2 combats line up on a particular turn for it to be worth it. And for a mythic that costs 6, like, I'm not that excited about it.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of other folks in my Discord, and even Channel Fireball tweeted out one of LSV's like little snippets from his set review. Like, he gave this a pretty high grade, and I wanted to, like, my gut said, oh, that's odd. Like, the first thing when I saw that and people talking it up, I was like, oh, am I just in the minority here? And I sounds like I am. I'm not sure if I'm right about it or not. I'm going to start low on the card, though. That's my take, right? I want to at least put a voice out there that says I don't think this card is just awesome straight up. You're going to have a lot of times, or sometimes you're going to be like, wow, that really did the thing, or your opponent's going to cast and you're like, wow, I got wrecked by that. But I don't think this card's actually going to have that high of a game in hand win rate on 17 lands.
I've written down a grade, and I'll let you tell me your grade, and we'll see if we're 2 shades apart or not.
Okay, it's a sort of it's a little bit of a hedge grade. I'm gonna give it a C plus, but that's because sometimes it's gonna be very bad and sometimes it's gonna be really good. I'll go with C plus there.
Okay, I went C minus, so we are actually 2 grades apart.
Nice, cool, good to hear because we didn't have a lot of that yesterday.
We had 5 of them for those wondering.
Yeah, we had 5 kind of disagreements. We have Virtue of Knowledge. This is the blue one in the Mythic cycle. 4 and a blue for an enchantment. The enchantment size says if you're a permanent entering the battlefield causes a triggered ability of a permanent you control to trigger, that ability triggers an additional time. So we've kind of got the Panharmonicon text here. We've got the instant side, the adventure, Vantress Vision. 1 and a blue, instant. Copy target triggered ability you control. You may choose new targets for that copy.
Just save some time and give this enough?
I'm gonna give it a yeah. I think you could go into this long-winded thing about like, oh, it kind of works at this and in this kind of deck, but no, let's just give it an F and we'll change our grade when we get wrecked by it, basically.
Okay.
That brings us to Horned Lock Whale. This is 4 blue, another adventure. It's a rare. It's a whale. So 4 blue blue for a 6/6 flash ward 2. And it says Horned Lockwell enters the battlefield tapped unless it's your turn. Okay. Lagoon Breach is the adventure side. It's an instant, 1 and a blue. The owner of target attacking creature you don't control puts it on the top or bottom of their library. Ooh,
yeah, this card's great, and also I really like the art on a lot of these cards, but it is weird that it shows it like ambushing a like griffin, and it can't block an ambush, and it also doesn't have reach or
that
whatever.
Is funny,
so
yeah.
A little confused by the art. I do like the art, but it's a little misleading. But this card's amazing.
Yeah, that's usually, I was kind of prepping myself when I read this card to be like, okay, this adventure is probably not going to be like that good. Low impact, it only costs 2. But that effect is well worth 2 mana. Often we pay like 3 for that. So yeah, that Lagoon Breach just on its own, solid card and stable to a giant creature. Yeah, I'm sold.
And having the option to play it untapped, like on your turn, is also huge.
Right, definitely. Yeah, I think
even though a lot of times you'll want to leave up like a counterspell and play it end of turn, just having like if you need a blocker, it can block.
It's kind of funny too because I wonder if that tapped ability wasn't added like for balance purposes, but for like logistics, because it's kind of weird. Like you don't want your players to be like playing the game dreading what your opponent's going to do in a few turns, because what's going to happen with this is like if it didn't have that tapped clause, you go like, all right, bounce your creature, send it to the top, and then they just be like I can never attack into them, like they're just hanging this Horned Lockwell over my head and exile if they have a bunch of mana up, right? So I wonder if that's a little bit of that, but anyways, that's neither here nor there. I'm going to give the Horned Lockwell an A.
Yep, I agree with you.
Moves on to black here. Spiteful Hexmage is our first black card. Single black mana for a 3/2. So that's, push stats. But when the Hexmage enters the battlefield, you create a cursed roll token and attach it to target creature you control.
I really like a lot of these cards that are make you read them 2 or 3 or 4 times to be like, how do I do it?
Yeah.
You're like, I don't think this one is great though. Is my perhaps hot take? I don't know if you're with me there.
No, I think so too. I think this one is solid. So the idea with it is you play this early. I'm saying you play it on turn 1. It's gonna be a 1/1. Pex in for a point or 2, and you then hopefully knock off the roll on turn 3 or turn 4 by putting a new roll on it. Right? That's one way of doing it. There's a few other things. Obviously you bargain away the cursed roll. Those are I think the 2 ways that you're gonna break, quote unquote, break this card. But when it comes down to it, you're not getting that much out of the deal, right? You're just getting a vanilla 3/2, which is good when if that's in your opening hand and things go right. You're like, okay, cool, like that's another little upside, but it's not an over the top card. It reads a little bit more like a constructed card to me, where you got like 4 copies of these and you're really doing something synergistic with getting rid of that roll.
Yeah, I mean it's a 1 mana celebration trigger. It's
true.
Like it goes in pretty much every themed deck.
Mm-hmm.
But I want to give it like a C, because I definitely see myself cutting this at the end of many drafts.
Yep, I was going to give it a C as well. It's got some upside, you do some cool things, but like you said, you're going to cut it sometimes. We've got Lord Skitter's Blessing up next. This is 1 and a black for an enchantment at rare. When Lord Skitter's Blessing enters the battlefield, you create a Wicked roll token attached to target creature you control. And the Wicked one is the enchanted creature gets +1/+1, and when the aura is put into the graveyard, each opponent loses 1 life. It also says at the beginning of your draw step, if you control an enchanted creature, you lose a life and you draw an additional card.
Yeah, so between cards like this and the Bitter Reunion and the Green Common Fox, like there's a lot of cards that really want you to play a 1-drop.
Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of
those. Which again, going back to yesterday, a lot of the 1-drops have 1 toughness. I think, Rat Out in response to something like this one is not as much of a blowout, but in response to the adventure one is certainly a massive blowout. So just reminding everybody of that. But this card, Phyrexian Arenas have been bad, but we've done a really bad job evaluating cards like this, and I think this one's actually good.
Yeah, no, I do too. It immediately gave me Call of the Ring vibes when I first saw it. I was like, oh, okay. And Mark's kind of alluding to the fact that we gave Call of the Ring a pretty low grade when we read it. And I think this has got a lot of the same kind of stuff going on. You get a little bit of something up front. Drawing a card and losing 1 life is so much less than 2. And just, I think if you can have that awesome curve of 1 into this, that's great, but you don't even need to do that. You can go 2-drop into 3-drop into double spell on 4. That's going to be quite strong too. So yeah, I think Hopefully, we don't have to come back next set review and be like, actually, there was a little thing we missed about this, and that's why this one's not good, you know. But live and learn. I'm gonna give this one a B plus.
A B plus?
Yeah.
I could even see it being
The A
higher,
range.
but it's also nice to. One of the downsides of Arena is sometimes it just kills you,
Right.
and like you can bargain this away pretty easily.
That's a really good point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I was thinking, oh, you can bargain away your rolls and just so you don't have any more enchanted creatures. But no, that's a way better way of doing it. Yeah. Okay. A minus.
I think I'm gonna give this an A minus.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, A minus for Lord Skitter's Blessing.
Nice. We figured it out. We cracked the case.
Until next time. Tangled Colony is up next. 1 and a black for a rat at rare. It's a 3/2. It can't block though, which is not a great ability. When Tangled Colony dies, you create X 1/1 rat tokens that can't block, where X is the amount of damage the colony dealt this turn.
Dealt to it.
Oh, sorry, dealt to it. My bad. Yeah, dealt to it this turn.
Yeah, so if you have that like X and a red spell where you can double the X, you can just make a boatload of rats.
Ooh, that's really cool. Yeah. So you're gonna have a 2-mana 3/2 that your opponent's not really gonna want to block, right? They're gonna be like, well, if I block, I lose my creature. They get some value. Okay, you're getting 2 rats at a minimum if this thing dies, and it's not gonna be a great draw later in the game. Is kind of the issue, right? Because later in the game they can either sort of ignore it, and obviously it can't block. I think it's quite strong early on, but this one's going to get a little bit of a knock just because it's, even on turn 4, 5, or 6, I think, it does lose a little bit.
Yeah, it's kind of got that, like there was that 3/1 in Bro that you could bring back from your graveyard. It's kind of got that where like your opponents really don't want to block it for the first few turns, and when they do, it feels bad for them.
Yep.
But it itself can't block, and that card was like, I don't know, this is like a C plus type of card maybe?
Yeah, you can even, I think just the Vanguard from Lord of the Rings with the 2/1, when it dies, you amass 1. That's kind of a similar analog where it's just like your opponent didn't really want to block that early, but it wasn't that bad later.
Well, that card gave you 2 blockers. This gives you 0 blockers.
0 blockers, yeah, that does change the equation a little bit. So what do you want to give
I can
this?
see it being like a C. Like I'm closer to a C than a C plus. Maybe.
Yeah, I think so as well. I'm going to give this a C.
Okay.
Next up, we've got Gumdrop Poisoner. This is 2 and a black for an adventure creature. It's a rare human warlock. The creature side is a 2/3 lifelink that says when Gumdrop Poisoner enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. And then the adventure side, Tempt with Treats, single black mana instant, you make a food token.
Can I just say how much I love the design of cards like this?
Oh, it's so cool. Yeah, it's awesome.
Oh. It makes its own like package where you just like feel so smart when you do the thing, but it's like very clear ingredients on how you're supposed to do it, but you still feel great.
Yeah.
Love the design of those.
They give you the recipe and you're like, look, I'm a master chef at this point, right? Like you can take all the credit. So the front side of this, 3/2 lifelink, that's an okay. Just like straight up, that's okay. And then your opponent's when how much life you've gained, that's mostly going to be from food. Of course, you give a food here, or you get a food here. I don't think there's all that many other ways that you're getting a life aside from like additional copies.
Charmed Clothier or whatever it was yesterday, but very few lifelink creatures.
So this is a card you can play in any deck, and it's going to be a CC minus basically. But sorry, that's not true. I forgot. Yeah, like you said, that it comes with the package. If you just put that card in your deck with no adventure side, it would be like a C or a C minus. With that adventure and with the potential to have even more food, so you can crack this food and have just basically the more food the better. I think this is going to be somewhere in the B plus range.
I wrote B plus.
Yeah.
Are you with me there?
Yep, I'm with you there.
Okay.
Next up, we've got Lord Skitter himself, the Sewer King. This is 2 and a black for a 3/3 legendary creature at rare. Whenever another rat enters the battlefield under your control, exile up to 1 target card from an opponent's graveyard, and it says the beginning of combat on your turn. Create a 1/1 black rat token that can't block. Ooh, wow.
Yeah, we got Black Rabblemaster.
Yeah, really. So it's not going to... That exile ability, they're going to be very minor. It's a constructed line of text, basically. But plopping out a 1/1 every single turn. Whew. That's nice.
And it's like 3/3 of stats instead of 2/2.
Yeah. Be careful, because this is a card that you do want to play before your attack step, right? A lot of times you want to play your spells in main phase 2, but this one when you have this in your deck, make sure you pause for a second when you take your draw step. These Rabblemaster-esque cards tend to be very strong. Just these armies in a can that, it's a bit different than something like a Rabblemaster or a Legion War Boss or an Adeline, but it's in that same neighborhood. I think it's a little bit worse, but not by a lot. I would give Lord Skitter an A-.
I wrote down A- as well.
Yeah.
We're still on the same page here.
Nice, lockstep. All right, and next up we've got The End. It's over. Thanks everybody for hanging out. We'll see you next. No, the card is called The End. 2 black. Instant rare. It says this spell costs 2 less to cast if your life is 5 or less. It says exile target creature or planeswalker. Search its controller's library, hand, and graveyard, hand, and library for any cards of any number of cards with the same name, and then you exile them. That player shuffles. So basically, you get to 4 mana, exile anything. You get to look at their hand, look through their deck, and take all the copies. Oh, sorry. Line of text I skimmed over. If they had copies of that in their hand, they draw a card for each one you exiled. So you see that kind of text on these kind of cards generally. So just so you know, your opponent doesn't get just majorly wrecked if they have 3 of them in their opening hand. This is a solid interaction spell. It's nothing special, but it's good.
Yeah, just 4 mana, exile something, look at your opponent's hand is really good.
Yeah, that's the big thing, right? You're looking at your opponent's hand. I don't think you should overlook that. And it's very easy to overlook that step.
And then the ability to cost 2 less is good. The ability to sometimes hit duplicates is good. Yeah. And you get to see their deck as well.
Yeah. Remember Test of Talents from Strixhaven? You felt so bad when your opponent got to see your hand, looked at your deck, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's so brutal. So don't overlook that effect. It's not just a constructed line of text.
So is this another A-? I
was gonna go B+ on this one. Not quite in the A- range, but yeah, B+.
Rankle's just a 4 mana kill spell.
Yeah, exactly. It is a 4 mana kill spell. Rankle's Prank. 2 black for a sorcery at rare. You can choose 1 or more, just like Rankle. The 3 modes here are each player discards 2 cards, each player loses 4 life, and each player sacrifices 2 creatures.
Yeah, this is not that exciting on first glance, but you only have to choose the ones that help you. That's true. Very important to mention.
Yeah.
I don't think this card's great, but I also don't think it's unplayable.
No, I don't think so either. That's my thought too. You do have to recognize the fact that sometimes you're just not going to want to cast. None of the modes are good for you. How do you break the symmetry on this? How do you put yourself in a position where one of the modes is likely going to be good for you whenever you draw it? Is there a way to do that, you think?
Well, yeah, there's a bunch of obvious ones. Either you have no creatures, or you have no hand other than this, or your opponent has 4 or less life, or you have a bunch of rats and they don't because you're playing black. So it's not that hard to engineer a situation where it's gonna do something. But you're right. There are going to be spots where you just draw this and it's you're rare and you just can't cast it.
I almost want to give this a pretty we were saying it's not too bad, but I think I'm gonna go in the D range for this one actually, just because I think there are going to be enough times when you draw this card and it's just not a card you want to draw, right? There's going to be times when you draw it and you're like, wow, I get to, I have 2 lands in hand I don't care about. They've got 2 cards in hand. I don't have many creatures. They have, maybe I have more. They have few. Great. You get value out of 2 modes. I don't think that's going to happen all that often though. So I'm going to start D actually on Rankle's Prank. But, yeah.
I wrote down C-, so we're slightly off here. Yep. And Barter and Blood is often not totally unplayable, and this is much better than that. So.
We saw, where was it? Oh, it was Call Time, right? We saw Turgrid's Shadow.
Turgrid's Shadow, was it?
That card was terrible. That card was really bad.
Didn't that card cost 5 though?
Yeah, it had Foretell. I think it was an instant though, wasn't it?
Anyways,
yeah.
I'm going to stick with C-,
okay.
and we'll. Yeah.
Cool. Next up, we've got Lich Knight's Conquest. 5 mana, 4 and a black for a sorcery at rare. Sacrifice any number of artifacts.
I think you skipped one.
Oh, which one? Oh, I did. My bad. Sorry. Yeah. Besiege the Mirrors.
Okay, you skipped this one. People are so excited about this.
Yeah. We got 1 black for a sorcery at Mythic with Bargain. It says search your library for a card, exile it face down, then shuffle. If this spell was bargained, you may cast the exiled spell without paying its mana cost. If that spell's mana value is 4 or less, put the exiled card into your hand if it wasn't cast this way. So we've got 4 mana for a Demonic Tutor effect. Hard to cast 4 mana, 1 black. But if you set this up, You're just casting any card to your deck. Not like one of the big problems with these 4-mana demonic tutors effects is you're taking the whole turn off, right? Like, ugh, that's a whole turn that your opponent's attacking you, not affecting the board. This solves that if you've got some fodder lying around.
Yeah, this is printed as a constructed card. Like
Yes.
it's going to be very good in multiple constructed formats. But and I usually don't like even like demonic, let alone diabolic tutor, which is the 4-mana one. But
Right.
even demonic tutor, I'm usually not very high on. But this card makes up for a lot of my issues with a card like tutor. So just being able to bargain to put something directly into play is decent, but you're still like you're not getting more than 4 mana and you're losing a permanent to do that. So it's like drawing a worse version of whatever 4-drop is in your deck.
Yeah.
I'm still like I'm not very high on it.
Yeah, there's 3 things I don't like about this card. 1, the cost, obviously. 1 black, black, black. That's not a lot of your decks are going to be able to cast that consistently. 2, a lot of the time when you would want to put like a demonic tutor style card in your deck, it's because you've got a really good, like a really great card, and usually those cost more than 4 mana, right? Otherwise, the really great card, like if your great card costs 3, well, you're losing out on the fact that you didn't cast it on 3. So, and the last thing, of course, is that you have to actually sacrifice something, which is baked into the bargain, of course. So it solves the problem. It solves a problem, I should say, that demonic tutor cards have. I think it gives rise to other problems, though. So I'm not going to be too high on this one, I don't think.
I wrote down D.
Yeah, I was going to go D+. I think you have a lot of hoops to jump through, and it's going to be an okay card when you can cast it. Okay. Next up, the one I tried to jump to, Lich Knight's Conquest. This is 5 mana, 4 and a black for a sorcery at rare. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, or tokens, so the bargain batching. Return that many creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Ooh.
Yeah, these knights drive a hard bargain. You got to bargain with each one of them.
But I'm sure you're just nailing me for a bad joke, and you make one yourself. Man,
I'll tell you, I went to Beijing when I was 20 with a friend and some parents, and the first time you bargain for something at like the market, it's like pretty fun and novel and exciting. But then when you have to spend like half an hour to buy literally anything, it takes its toll.
That's funny. I've never even considered that. Yeah, that's cool. I've never been to I haven't been that many places, so I look forward to bargaining in the future. What's the read on this card in the context of, I mean, black decks, but just I don't know. I think this one is an over-the-top effect that reads really well, but I actually think it plays out probably a little bit worse than it reads. Because
yeah, I don't think you're gonna like you have to match up the number of creatures you want to return with the number of things you're willing to sacrifice. And the spot in the game where that happens is not going to be on turn 5. So it's like super late, and it's like I think it's going to be worse than just like we saw the black like common double raise dead for 3 mana. I think that's just better than this.
I think so too. The interesting thing that chat's bringing up here is you can actually like bring back the things you sacrificed. Because,
well, only if you're sacrificing artifact or enchantment creatures.
Right. Well, sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments. Oh, sorry. Yes. Sorry. That's it baked into what? Yeah, you're totally right. So it's not that relevant.
Yeah, you can sacrifice like a gingerbread and bring it back, but you can't sacrifice non-artifact or enchantment creatures.
This kind of has the issue I think that I was talking about a few cards ago, but it's really bad in your opening hand, like quite weak. You both like for this card to be good, you have to be getting back 2 things, right? Just getting back 1 thing is not good enough because then you're sacking something, get something back, and that's for 5 mana. And when you are playing a game where this is in your opening hand, sure you can set up trades and trade off aggressively, but you also have to have material in the battlefield to sacrifice after that. And the things you trade off early are probably not going to cost that much. So you might only be getting 5 mana back, you reanimate a 2-drop and a 3-drop. So I'm going to start pretty low on this one, actually. I'm going to give this one a D+.
Okay, I wrote down D-.
Okay, just like even worse. Yeah, and maybe we're not giving enough credit to the fact that this is a card you maybe build your deck around, but I don't even think this is like... I don't think it's necessarily worth the hoops to jump through, because it's not like you build your deck around this, it's not like you instantly win or anything.
Yeah, 5 mana. Give your Ginger Brute Vigilance.
Right, yeah. Let's start low in it. I think somewhere in the D range. So I'll keep my D plus because I'm
Okay.
a little bit of a dreamer. Next up, we got Spectre of Mortality. This is 3 black for a rare. It's a 3/3 flyer. When Spectre of Mortality enters the battlefield, you may exile one or more creature cards from your graveyard. When you do, each other creature gets -X until end of turn, where X is the number of cards exiled this way.
Yeah, so make sure you don't draft this with the last card we saw, because
Right, that's an on-vote.
so it's this card on first read. I was like, oh, this card's busted.
Yeah,
But
me too.
it's hard to get the exact right number of creatures in your graveyard that you're going to want. Like especially on turn 5, right?
Yeah, and it's not clear that you want to use this ability even. Like if you're ahead and this card's in your hand, it's just gonna be a 5 mana 3/3 flyer, which is not the worst buyout clause, but it's not just a good baseline.
No, it's we're talking Mirkwood Bats type of stats.
Right.
I still think this card's good.
Me too.
But yeah, like a lot of times you're just gonna have one or two creatures in your graveyard, and you being the black player means you're more likely to have stuff like rats that you're saving around.
Right.
So I'm thinking it's somewhere in the B range.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a B minus because I think you have to account for the times when it is gonna be really, really good. You wrath the board when wrathing the board is good for you, and you're left with a 3/3 flyer. You're gonna feel really, really good about that. You gotta counterbalance that with the fact that the opposite is gonna be true. But I don't think we can give this too low for grade. So I'll give it a B minus for Spectre of Mortality as well.
Okay, I'll stick with a B.
Ashiok, the one planeswalker in this set, where they're actually, for those who haven't heard, they're cutting down to around one planeswalker a set going forward. So this is our one.
I love it.
Yeah, I think
less
it's actually good.
for better.
No, I not even the fact, like, I'm not as much of, I think you dislike planeswalkers more than I do by a little bit, but I just think, like, we've had a little bit of planeswalker fatigue. When there's a new planeswalker, I'm like, okay. You know, I'm not like, oh, what does it do? Like, it used to be like that. So I think cutting it down is good. Anyways, Ashiok, Wicked Manipulator. 5 mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. It's 3 black. Actually, I lost the blue, apparently, somewhere along the way to Eldraine. It's got a static ability. It says, if you would pay life while your library has at least that many cards in it, exile that many cards from the top of your library instead. So I don't think that's very relevant in Limited, correct?
Yeah, paying life is different than losing life.
Yes.
And I can't think of a card that asks you to pay life in this set.
Yeah, and
so I think that's more of a constructed thing.
So the +1 ability, it's got 3 abilities. +1 is look at the top 2 cards of your library, exile one of them, put one of them into your hand. Okay, so it's a little bit of sleight of hand. -2, create 2 1/1 black nightmare creature tokens with at the beginning of combat on your turn. If a card was put into exile this turn, combos is the first ability, you put a 1/1 counter on this creature. So they'll just grow as you're +1ing. The -7 ability is target player exiles the top X cards from their library, where X is the total mana value of cards you own in exile. So your +1 ability draws you cards, your -2 gives you some meaningful threats, and the negative ability, you're likely going to win if you get to activate that, because you'll likely just exile their whole deck.
Yeah, and chat pointing out that Necropotence is in the set.
Oh, so true, yeah. Combo.
But then, like, this card gets you to draw cards, and Necro gets you to draw cards, and it's not really like you're really doing it, although it is kind of cute.
Yeah, it is cute.
So yeah, that second ability is pretty nice. There's actually quite a bit of cards that exile stuff from graveyards, which is one way to do this, because it just the card just has to be put into exile. But the more obvious way is, of course, putting something as an adventure. But if I had like 3 Ashioks, I might play Soul Guide Lantern.
Yeah, sure. So let's just mostly evaluate this as 5 mana, 5 loyalty planeswalker, +1. Draw the best card of your top 2, -2. I think probably -2 is probably the most interesting one to talk about, because thinking about how that actually plays out is a little bit novel. So you're gonna, let's just say you negative this the turn it comes down. You're gonna make 2 1/1s, and then there's not gonna be, aside from, yeah, sure, adventurers, you're gonna be able to exile stuff to grow your creatures, but mostly they're gonna grow once per turn when you do the plus ability.
Yeah, or you can like -2 and then untap and -2 and cast an adventure and grow all 4 of them.
Yeah.
This card's good. It's very good.
I
like making 2 bodies to protect itself is also just good, even if you're just blocking with them.
I also think a lot of the time you're just going to go play this plus, go up to 6 loyalty, and that's a lot of loyalty. Your opponent has to respect that. I actually imagine it's probably going to be the most common play pattern. You play it, you plus, then you negative. And unless you're just on a very stable board, then you negative, then you plus, right? Anyways, this is a good card. Like, I don't think we have to talk about for too much longer the ins and outs. I'm just going to give Ashiok an A.
Yep, I was on A as well.
Great.
Okay.
All right, that brings us to our black mythic of the cycle, Virtue of Persistence. 5 black for enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Okay. Locthwain Scorn is the adventure side. It's a sorcery for 1 and a black. Target creature gets -3/-3 until end of turn. You gain 2 life. Oh my goodness.
So I actually think that we can spend even less time on this card and like just give it an A+.
A+, yeah. It's just so like, yeah, all I'm going to say is that, oh, really expensive, great effect, but how are you going to stay alive? The adventure. It's very self-solving. So yeah, just A+ on this card. Fantastic. Really, really good.
Insane.
All right, that brings us to red now. So, great name to start us off with here. Rotisserie Elemental. Single red mana for a 1/1 menace at rare. When Rotisserie Elemental deals combat damage to a player, put a skewer counter on Rotisserie Elemental. Then you may sacrifice it. If you do, exile the top X cards of your library, where X is the number of skewer counters on the Elemental. You can play those cards this turn.
Yeah, so it's a 1-drop in a set that wants you to play 1-drops.
Mm-hmm.
That ability, I'm not so sure on, because you're not going to want to like hit them on turn 2 and have 1 card that you might not even be able to cast. So you have to hit them multiple times with this, and like a 1/1 menace is not getting through forever.
The way I read this card is it's a Bomat Courier that attacks a little bit better, but gives you the card advantage ability is worse.
But I think that's a worse card.
Yes, I think so too. Yeah, I think that's quite a worse card.
I want to give this like C+.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. I think the way I am looking at this card is it's almost looking at it like a common with some incidental upside sometimes. Like, it's just like, you're going to play this, put a roll on it, a 2/2 menace is a relevant threat, and yeah, sometimes you'll sack it in the late game, draw some cards, if you can get it, right? And that's marginal upside. So I'll give it a C+ as well. Next up, Song of Totentans. X and a red for a sorcery at rare. Create X 1/1 black rat tokens that can't block. Creatures you control gain haste until end of turn. Wow.
Yeah, this thing's kind of nice.
Yeah, it's like a rat fireball, sort of. Okay, so you're going to cast this again. Let's just do a use case for X here, or an average case scenario. Let's say you cast this X = 4 on turn 5. I imagine what's going to happen in a lot of board states is you attack, maybe 1 gets eaten, you get in for 3, then you do whatever you like with the rest of the rats after you untap next turn. And later, it scales as you go on. It's not even that bad for X = 2. Just make 2 rats, like that triggers your celebration. You're going to have some fodder lying around if you want that. I think it's pretty good at most points in the curve.
Yeah, it's there's also a lot of the bonus sheet that work really well with this.
Okay.
So I think there's a lot of like, it's weird to combine a bonus sheet card with a rare and be like, oh, it's not going to come together that often, but there are enough ways of making rats into pretty good cards that I think even if you don't have a great attack, you're still going to be reasonably happy with this card.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. I think you're, like I said, sometimes you're going to attack in and lose 1. Sometimes you're just not going to attack in, and you're going to set up for next turn, whatever you're doing. So what do you want to give this one?
Like an A-?
Oh, that's higher than I was going to go. I was just going to give it a B. So yeah, I think, the fact that you're so confident about the A- makes me think that I should bring it up a little bit, and maybe.
I don't think on my face when I said A-. I wasn't that confident.
Okay. I was just gonna give it a B, and if you want to say it A-, I think it's totally fine.
Yeah. I'll stay with my hot take A-.
Okay, let's do that. Charming Scoundrel is next. 1 and a red for a 1/1 rare. It's 1/1 haste at rare. When Charming Scoundrel enters the battlefield, you choose 1. 3 modes here are discard a card, then draw a card, create a treasure token, or create a wicked roll token attached to target creature you control. So you've got a baseline here of on turn 2, you're most likely going to go make a 1/1, put a wicked roll token on it. That's not bad. 2/2 haste. And then, later in the game or midpoint of the game, you're going to do the other 2 abilities.
Yeah, this is like a callback to Charming Prince, I think.
Oh yeah, I didn't even know that. Yeah, that's a great observation.
Yep, and I think it's worse than Charming Prince, but Charming Prince was fantastic.
Yeah, I
Not a
think
lot worse though, right?
this is still a good card though. I think this is like a 2/2 haste with that triggers your celebration, that has the Wicked roll, which is the best roll for the aggressive decks, that also has late game value. I still think this card's good. Like quite, like I would give this a B.
I wrote down B minus.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Yeah, but you know what? B minus actually sounds about right when I hear it. Said back to me. So we'll say B minus. It's just such a flexible card. It's good on turn 2. It's gonna be solid later. So yeah, I like it.
Such a scientific methodology we use for these.
Yeah, I know, right?
Sounds like better when you say a B minus. So.
Yeah. Food fight. I think this is gonna be a quick F. One in a red for an enchantment at rare. Artifacts you control have 2. Sacrifice this artifact. It deals damage to equal. It deals damage to any target equal to 1 plus the number of permanents named food fight you control, which obviously is going to be 1 in your limited decks most of the time.
Yeah, so pay 2, sack to deal 2, but there's just not... Like, if this was artifact or enchantment you could sacrifice, it'd be pretty good.
Right.
But artifacts only, yeah, I think it's just enough.
Yeah, there's just not going to be enough stuff lying around for this to be good. Next up is Raging Battle Mouse. This is 1 in a red for a 2/1 at rare. It says, the second spell you cast each turn costs 1 less to cast, and it's got a celebration ability. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, target creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn.
Yeah, so a little understated unless you can double spell with it right away.
Mm-hmm.
But pretty threatening on the ability side.
Yeah, so you play this as your 2-drop, and then you can play 2 2-drops the turn after. That's pretty nice. That's a nice start.
Because you're doing that, you're most likely also giving something +1/+1.
Yeah, attacking as a 3/2. And by the way, like, you shouldn't worry too much about keeping this thing around. Like, I know it's rare and it's got some cool abilities, but like, if you can attack for 3 and you've double spelled on turn 3 and you've already made a mana off of this and you trade it off, that's perfectly fine. Don't worry too much about that.
Like a B minus.
I was gonna go C+ on it. I think it's like a weird mana dork that gives a little bit of a buff, and that's fine. Yeah, I'm gonna go C- on the Battle Mouse.
C+, you mean, right?
Sorry, C+, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
We've got Godric, Cloaked Reveler, up next. This is 1 red for a 3/3 at rare. It's a legendary creature, human noble. It's got haste. So 3/3 haste for 3. It's got a celebration ability, too. As long as 2 or more non-land permanents enter the battlefield under your control this turn, and that's the celebration thing that probably don't have to read out again this episode, Godric, Cloaked Reveler, is a dragon with base power and toughness 4/4 flying, and red pump dragons you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's quite the party trick.
Yeah, for real. So, like,
this card slaps.
It slaps, as the kids say. So the baseline of just 3 mana 3/3 haste, that's solid. Like, you would play that in your aggressive decks very happily, and it's just gonna attack for 4 on turn 4 so much of the time. Yeah, this thing brings the beats. I really like this one.
You want to give this? I was gonna say like B+.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go too. Yeah, just good on 3 and good as the game goes on. Great. Next up, we've got Emodane, the Pyro Hammer, another legend here. 2 red for a 4/4 at rare. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control that targets only a single creature deals damage to that creature. Or wait, sorry, let me read this again. Whenever an instant or sorcery spell you control that targets only a single creature deals damage to that creature, Emodane deals that much damage to each opponent. So you cast Torch the Tower, or whatever that card is called, the shock, and you shock your thing, you deal 2 to their face as well.
Yeah, normally this card wouldn't excite me, but there's so many burn spells in this set.
Yeah, that was the exact thing I thought. Like, I read this card during spoiler season before all the comments came out. I'm like, okay, whatever. Like, it's a 4 mana 4/4. Sometimes there's upside. There's so much burn in this set that I think you're going to be triggering this quite a bit.
Yeah, like even that 2+X burn spell in common, like the blue-red-ish one, like that can just kill somebody with this.
Yeah. That being said, it's still just a 4 mana 4/4 that, no ETB or anything. It's just okay. It's the baseline, even though we're talking about the ability a little bit, it's more relevant than it would be in a normal set. It's still not amazing. I would just give Emodane a C+.
C plus. I
Yeah.
was gonna go B minus with this as well, so
Alright.
I'll stick there.
Next up, we've got Red Cap Gutter Dweller. This is 2 red for a 3/3 menace at rare. And it says when Red Cap Gutter Dweller enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 rat creature tokens. Wow, okay. Obviously you can't block like all rats can't. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Red Cap Gutter Dweller and exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. It just keeps on going, right? I'm like, all right, downside's gonna come at some point. Where are we going with this? All the abilities are just upside here.
Yeah, this card's nuts.
Yeah, this I think this is gonna be also like one of the better rares in the set. Like I think this is an A.
I think it's somewhere between A and A minus, but I think I'll join you on an A.
It's a solid body for 3/3 minutes for 4. What it's a little bit understated, but coming with 2 rats makes up for that a lot, and you're drawing cards, and I really like this. Great. The red one here, Virtue of Courage, 3 red for Mythic enchantment. When a source you control deals non-combat damage to opponent, you may exile that many cards from the top of your library. You may play those cards this turn. Okay, so not all that relevant, although like we mentioned, more burn in the set than usual. The adventure side, Embers Blaze, 1 red for an instant. Embers Blaze deals 2 damage to any target.
I'm trying to remember now how many of the burn spells go face, and I think most of them don't.
Very, very few. I think it's like 0 to 1 at common uncommon, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so that ability, especially because you can't cast the adventure side of this after the things in play, the enchantment's almost irrelevant.
Mm-hmm. There's the 0/4 that taps to deal damage to your opponent, right?
Yep.
I think I see this as expensive shock that you get a 5 mana permanent that you can sack at some point if you just like need something to play. Sometimes you're gonna play and be like, okay, it's actually gonna do something, but that's not gonna happen very often. And how much do we like that? Not that much. Expensive shock's not great.
C minus?
Yeah, I'd give a C minus to Virtue of Courage. That was good.
Okay.
Next up, another mythic here, Realm Scorch Hellkite. 4 red for a 4/6. It's got bargain. Flying haste. When Realm Scorch Hellkite enters the battlefield, if it was bargained, add 4 mana of any color, of any combination of colors, and it also has the ability, 1 red, Realm Scorch Hellkite deals 1 damage to any target. Whew.
Yeah, so you can just sacrifice something to deal 2 damage,
basically,
to cast fire, which is very appropriate.
Yeah, exactly. Or just cast, another 4-drop or something, right? Like that's gonna be very good too. This card's great, just fantastic.
Yeah, this is somewhere between A and A plus.
Yeah, I'm gonna give it I think an A plus. Honestly, it's gonna come down and kill things. Like it's a giant hasty flying dragon that comes down and kills things, and then you can pump mana into it to kill more things or deal damage to your opponent, or play another creature after this or spell. Yeah, this card's.
Yeah, you're right. It also it catches you up when you're behind.
Yeah.
It's definitely an A plus. Yeah, you're right.
Great.
You're right.
Okay, so that moves on to green now, with Bramble Familiar being our first one here. 1 and a green for an adventure creature. It's at rare. It's a 2/2 that you can tap to add green. And it also has the ability, 1 and a green, discard a card, return Bramble Familiar to its owner's hand. So you get to bounce it back to your hand.
It does need to tap.
It does need to tap. Yeah, tap ability. Yeah. The adventure side is Fetch Quest. It's 5 green for a sorcery. Mill 7 cards, then put a creature, enchantment, or land from among those milled cards onto the battlefield. So it's kind of like a weird reanimation effect or not even reanimation. You just like look at the top 7, put one of those things onto the battlefield.
So this is another here's the recipe.
Yeah.
Have fun. Go do the thing.
Yeah.
Go nuts.
Plays all with itself.
I love it.
Yeah, this is a good card.
Yeah, this is A minus ish.
Yeah, I think so. So your 2-minute 2/2 mana dork that eventually gets picked up and casts something, most likely a 4 or 5 drop. Looking at the top 7, you're gonna have a good selection of cards to look at. I guess the one slightly awkward thing here is that if you're discarding a card to return this to your hand to cast Fetch Quest, you're not gonna wanna or be able to discard a land that often because Fetch Quest does cost 7, right? So it's a little bit awkward there, but it's just that's a small thing.
Yeah, it's kind of got a little bit of Shigeki vibes going on.
Yeah, a little bit of that. I think I'm actually gonna give it a little bit of a lower grade. I was just gonna give this a B.
B. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think mostly because I don't think you're actually going to cast Fetch Quest that often. It's a nice upside, but... All right, next up we've got Elvish Archivist. This is 1 and a green for a 0/1 at rare. It says whenever one or more artifacts enters the battlefield under your control, you put 2 +1/+1 counters on Elvish Archivist. This ability triggers only once a turn. Whenever one or more enchantments enters the battlefield under your control, draw a card. This also only triggers once a turn.
Cards. Well, another X one. There's been a bunch of them at rare that I've been pointing all of them out, but there's a lot. And this one's also great, just like a lot of the other ones.
Yep. You're starting off a little slow, but just like the Fairy we saw, right? The 1/3 that costs 3, we're like, oh, you have to untap with it for it to be good. You're a 2-mana card. That's okay. If this gets gotten by a cheap X1 hate card or a shock, you're a little sad, but you're not actually falling that far behind, right? You've only spent 2 mana. And then the upside when you untap and you've got these card types, just fantastic.
It's still an 0/1 for 2 mana,
so
I think I'm gonna give it something like a B.
Yeah, I was gonna give that too. I think maybe my verbiage of fantastic is a little bit too far too strong. But yeah, I'll join you on B for Elvish Archivist.
Great.
Feral Encounter is up next. Green for a sorcery at rare. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may exile a creature card from among them. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. You may cast the exiled card this turn. At the beginning of your next combat phase this turn, target creature you control deals damage equal to its power up to one target creature you don't control.
So I'm going to ask this again.
Yeah.
Can you cast an adventure off of this?
The top 5 cards of your library, you may exile a creature card. Like exile the creature and then can you cast that adventure? That's a good question. I think adventures.
Card. I think so.
Yes,
right?
you can. Yeah, that works. That totally works.
Okay.
So the way.
Yeah, I mean, so like, this could just be like a 2 mana fight spell.
Yes, that's the baseline here. Your buyout.
Yeah, and then you're not always going to hit something you can cast in the top 5, but you also don't need to spend any extra mana to see that. Like, it's not like you need to like pay X mana to look at a lot of types of cards like this. You pay X and you look at the top X, and then you maybe get something like that.
Yep.
But I actually like this card quite a bit.
Yeah, it's I gotta say it's a lot of words for pretty simple effect, but yeah, this is you're just happy with the baseline, and sometimes you draw this in the late game. Like basically, you're gonna just treat this as a fight spell when you put it in your deck, and then sometimes in the late game you draw it on turn 5, turn 6. You're like, okay, cool, just do that, cast my creature, works out.
Yeah, and then it's not like that creature has to be the one that fights.
Right, exactly.
Like any of your creatures can fight. Yeah.
So I would give green is a little bit of a you have to think about that too. It's just not trivial.
Well, you're not casting it on turn 2. I agree, but it's not a turn 2 play anyway.
No. I'm just saying but even on turn 4, sometimes you're not gonna have green, right?
Yeah.
So I would give like this, Rabid Bite. I would give like a C or a C plus around there. And this is substantial upside in the late game, so I think this bumps it up to a B-.
Yeah, I think B- is good.
Great. Next up, we've got a Saga, the Huntsman's Redemption. This is 2 and a green for a rare Saga. First chapter is you make a 3/3 beast token. Second chapter is you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature or a basic land card, put into your hand, then shuffle. Third chapter, up to 2 target creatures, each gain +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. Wow.
Yeah, I misspoke on the last card. It's a bite, not a fight.
Yes.
I said fight.
Yes.
Which is better. So we see one of the larger. I think there's one more other type of token that's also larger than a 2/2. So there are. That is going to be spots where there's relevant. We've seen a card that copies a token. There's also that 2 mana black uncommon enchantment that kills something with CMC 2 or less. Which like is a card that I really like. But this card is great. Mm-hmm. I really like it.
Yeah.
I don't know if you add anything to that.
Yes.
It's a good card.
This is good card, good magic card. I like this in my deck. Yeah, you're gonna like erase that second chapter and it's still a great card, right? Just make a 3/3 and then so at some point in the future your things are gonna get a really substantial boost. Like +2/+2 and trample to 2 things. That's a lot of damage. Because it was great in that green aggro deck we were talking about yesterday. So just a great package overall. Like here's a way to put it. When will you be saying yes to that second chapter?
fairly often, I think, because you can upgrade your creature, right? Like you can sacrifice whatever creature you have lying around, as long as you have like a pretty big board, and then just get whatever bomb rare you want to. Like there's going to be upside to it, even though there will be times you don't want to do it because you want the third chapter to have 2 targets. But if that's the case, then I think you're still like this is kind of like the Weatherseed Treaty from DMU to me, where you get some material early on, and then the third chapter just pushes a whole bunch of damage.
Yeah, and then there's like rats lying around if you're black-green, so that's like not a cost at all. I was gonna say you're only gonna use that second ability as like if you draw this later, but I do think that if you go 1-drop, 2-drop this, or like if you have a 1-drop that's maybe got a little small ability, like maybe the red hasty creature that dies into a rat, like that's a good thing to sacrifice. Is if like you might just not mind sacrificing your 1-drop to go get the best creature in your deck. Is kind of what I'm talking about here. So that
you also might just not have a 4-drop otherwise,
right?
And so this gives you like a 4-drop to play.
A lot of great things to say about this card. It's such a nice package, just tight and 3 mana. I want to give this an A-.
Yeah, that's where I was as well.
Great. Next up, we've got Sentinel of Lost Lore. This is 1 green for a 3/4 at rare. When Sentinel of Lost Lore enters the battlefield, you choose 1 or more. 3 modes here. First mode is return target card you own in exile that has an adventure to your hand. Second is put target card you don't own in exile that has an adventure on the bottom of its owner's library. Third ability, exile target player's grave.
Yeah, so being able to choose the third ability is almost irrelevant, but being able to choose both of the first 2 abilities is nice. Like, there's not a lot of adventures that resetting are going to be that impactful.
Yep.
Most of them are pretty minor effects on the spell side. But even just like your grabby giant making an extra treasure in the super late game, like that just gives you another thing to bargain. And that's probably the worst example I could think of.
Yeah, I think this one you're just going to play on 3 a lot of the time if you just have this in your opening hand. And like a lot of the cards we've seen on the rares today, like you draw it late and it's like, great, it's got a little bit of upside too. So
yeah, I think I want to give this like a B+ for the stats.
Yeah, I was just going to give it a B, but yeah, they're around there. We've got Blossoming Tortoise here, a nice mythic, 2 green for a 3/3. It enters the battlefield. Whenever Blossoming Tortoise enters the battlefield or attacks, mill 3 cards. Then return a land card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It also says activated abilities of lands you control cost 1 less to activate, and it also says land creatures you control get +1/+1. So there is a cycle of creature lands in this set. I don't think there's any other. I guess there's the Edgewell N in with the activated ability on it, so that's kind of cute. But mostly we're just looking. Yeah, go ahead.
Also, the common Lay of the Land, right?
That is true. Yeah, your bargain Lay of the Land gets +1/+1. So mostly though, we're gonna look at the top ability. 4 mana 3/3 enters the battlefield. Not guaranteed to ramp you, but if you're like 70% likely to ramp you or something.
Yeah, it's or attacks.
Or attacks, so it's, yeah.
And there's cards like Evolving Wilds that you can bin and then bring back, kind of like Slogger or whatever from Midnight Hunt.
Oh, the center in chat points out something really that you're gonna like. It makes your Crystal Grotto just not have to. You don't have to filter it. You can just tap it, right? That's so cool.
Oh my god,
that's awesome. Okay.
Oh, I'm even more sold. I was already sold. This is great.
So, what do you want to give Blossoming Tortoise?
4 mana 3/3. We're kind of allergic to those stats, but it's giving, as long as it's giving you value, and it will most of the time. I think I'm gonna give this C+.
I was gonna go B-, but I think that like it's gonna, by the time you like, basically if you ramp once with this from your ETB or your 1 attack, and I'm assuming it's only gonna get in 1 attack, they're either gonna trade with it or just gonna get bricked. I think you're gonna get a land out of the deal. And 4 mana 3/3 that you get a land out of the deal. I think that's pretty good.
Yes, yeah. If it hits often enough, B- is probably a better rate. But
we've got I guess one thing I will note is that if you are playing that Lay of the Land, single green mana, getting a land and replacing lands in your deck with that, it makes this card a little bit worse, right? If you're like 15 lands plus those 2, or 2 of those, you're not gonna hit land as often.
But yeah, that's a good counterpoint. Yeah.
We've got kind of a ridiculous card here. Gruff Triplets. Just Mark's just shaking his head for those not watching. 3 green for a rare. Just a rare. It's a 3/3 trample. And it says, when Gruff Triplets enters the battlefield, if it isn't a token, create 2 tokens that are copies of it. So you're paying 6 mana for 9/9 worth of stats across 3 bodies. But wait, there's more. It also says, when Gruff Triplets dies, any of them, right, because they're all copies, put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to its power on each creature you control named Gruff Triplets.
Yeah, I've been calling this thing pre-cursing golem because as soon as it's cast, your opponent's going to be cursing a lot.
Yeah, with Precursor Golem, you're like, oh, great, I have a removal spell. And with this, you're like, oh, crap, I only have removal spells. Like, oh my goodness. This is just ridiculous.
It's also annoying that it's triple green because really, like, whenever you cast this, it should be GG, right?
Yeah, but I'm sure. Yeah, that's your second one today, Mark. I get one more in there, and you can't call me on it. A+?
I've already written us both down for A++.
Yep. You read me like a book. All right, cool. Next up, we've got our Mythic enchantment here, adventure. This is Virtue of Strength, 5 green for a Mythic enchantment. It says, if you tap a basic land for mana, it produces 3 times that much mana instead. Okay. The adventure side is Garenbrig Growth, single green mana for a sorcery. Return target creature or land card from your graveyard to your hand. Your classic Mythic C- here. Yeah.
I think I'm probably with you on C- there.
Right, and just for those who are, if you're maybe not paying as much attention to this one as you're listening to this, we're just looking at this for the adventure side, right? You're just looking at the 1 mana sorcery, get back something from your yard, and that's around a C-. We've got next up Thunderous Debut. This is 6 green for a sorcery at rare with bargain. Look at the top 20 cards in your library. 20 is a big number. They don't print 20 on cards very many. On very many cards. You may reveal up to 2 creature cards from among them. If this spell was bargained, put the revealed cards on the battlefield. Otherwise, reveal the card and put them into your hand.
Yes, we talked about how your 8 mana cards have to win you the game, and this doesn't.
No, this doesn't. I think
so. It's just
an F. Yep. Not into it. Okay, so now we have a cycle of creature lands here. Some pretty powerful ones, too. These are enemy colored. First one is the red-white one, Restless Bivouac. It's a rare land, enters the battlefield tapped, and adds red or white. The ability is 1 red-white. Restless Bivouac becomes a 2/2 red and white Ox creature until end of turn. It's still a land. And whenever it attacks, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Ooh, wow.
Yeah, so Raging Ravine.
Yeah, man. It's a cheaper Raging Ravine. It's a little bit smaller, of course, but it can put the counter in different places. And I do want to note, because this is not something I know a lot of people, especially mostly limited players who don't play with these cards very often, if you activate the ability twice, you'll actually put 2 counters on something, right? So if you get to that 7 mana effectively, you can activate that 1 red white and the ability stacks. It's kind of strange, but it works that way.
So it's hard to rate these because it's like they're never getting cut no matter.
Sorry,
what.
I made a mistake. Nope, sorry. Apparently, chat is just saying it's not. They templated it a little bit differently, so never mind.
Oh, because it's an attack trigger.
It's an attack trigger. Yes, my bad. Yep. Thank you, chat. But just so you know, Raging Ravine and Den of the Bugbear, it does work that way if you do play with those cards. Anyways, what do you think about Restless Bivouac?
It's really good. I want to give it somewhere B-. I'll say B- just to be safer, I guess.
Yeah, it's when you know your colors in the draft, you're gonna want to take these pretty highly, right? You're gonna be like, yeah, these like this whole cycle. I think you're not gonna take them early, of course. You're not. I mean, maybe for splashing or something, but speculatively. But this is once you know your red white, I would give this a B.
Yeah, the B range is kind of to show you that this is better than taking good cards for your deck, right? Because like you're going to take this over C+ cards.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So that just should tell you how strong these types of cards are.
Yes, definitely. The next one is Restless Cottage. This is the black-green one. Enters tapped, adds black-green. The ability is 2 black-green. Restless Cottage becomes a 4/4 black and green horror creature. Still land. And whenever it attacks, you create a food token and exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard.
Yeah, this one's also great.
Yeah, they've really pushed these ones.
You don't even need to exile the card to make the food. Like you just get the food. 4/4 for essentially 5 mana because you have to be able to attack with it as well.
That's big though. Like you know what's gonna like a lot of the time what's gonna happen is, I mean, you might just attack with your 4/4, but a lot of times you just leave up mana, or if you're leaving up mana, your opponent just can't stack into this, right? It's just 4/4 is large.
Yeah, I gave the last one a B minus. I'm gonna give this one a B.
Yep, me too. The white-black one's next. Restless Fortress enters tapped. Of course, like all these, adds white and black. The ability is 2 black-white. Restless Fortress becomes a 1/4 black and white nightmare creature. It's still a land, and when it attacks, the defending player loses 2 life, and you gain 2 life.
Yeah, this one, I don't think we need to expand on these a lot. This one's worse than the other two, but still a B minus
Still good.
to me.
Yep, exactly. The red-blue one, the ability, I'm not going to read the other text, but the ability is red-blue. The Restless Spire becomes a 2/1 blue and red elemental creature token with, as long as it's your turn, it has first strike, and whenever it attacks, you scry 1.
Yeah, a little unfortunate because blue-red wants to play more at instant speed, so you want the threat of activation on blocks to be better with this, I think. So kind of frustrating that this is the one they chose for this color pair.
Still good.
But still, yeah, still B minus.
Still B minus, yeah. And then the last one here, Restless Vinestalker, the blue-green one. The ability is 3 blue-green. Until end of turn, Restless Vinestalk becomes a 5/5 plant creature token with trample. It's still a land. And when it attacks, up to one other target creature has base power and toughness 3/3 until end of turn.
Yeah, so if they have a huge thing, you can shrink it. If they don't have a huge thing, you can make one of your things a 3/3 and get through. So that ability is going to be really good. Another B minus.
Yeah, I think this one more than the others, you're just gonna like kind of set it and forget it, and then you're just like, all right, well, I'm just turn 6, bash with my 5/5 that's suddenly hasty in here, right? So yeah, just 5/5 trample. Not just I think this is actually probably the best one, maybe.
Yeah, I think the green black one is close, but I think I will change my grade to a B for this.
Yeah, I was gonna go B on this too.
Okay.
We've got some artifacts here. The Iron Crag is our first one. 2 mana for a legendary artifact at rare. Taps to add a colorless, so 2 mana rock. We don't usually see those. It says whenever a legendary creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can have the Iron Crag become a legendary equipment named Everflame, Hero's Legacy. If you do, it gains 3 and equip 3, and the equipped creature gets +3/+3. And then it loses the mana rock ability too.
Yeah, it's weird that it just like becomes that.
Right,
it's
yeah.
not a token, it's not a like flip side. It just happens. But it is optional, so you can continue to have your mana rock if you want. But I don't think there's a ton of legends in this set. Am I misremembering that? I haven't done much of a check.
It's about average. I think actually lower than average compared to some sets in the past 2 years or whatever.
Okay.
So you're mostly valuing this as a mana rock. Sorry?
Still pretty interested in this, like a 2 mana rock.
In the right deck, right? You gotta have solid 4s and 5s. You don't want to just be putting this in your like leanish black-white mid-range deck that like has a bunch of cheap cards or black or any more aggressive deck. And I think that's obvious for a lot of people listening, but I do there's a lot of people who have listened to like Cube content and heard how like, oh, mana rocks like Cold Steelheart and Mindstone are so good, and then like put them in their like red-white aggro deck, right? This is not an aggro card, and even when you're more mid-rangey, you do want to make sure you've got 4s, 5s, 6s, a healthy number to actually make sure you're tapping this for mana most turns. But if you're there, 2 mana rock solid. So what do you want to give this one?
I was thinking like a C.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a C as well. Cool.
Okay. And notably, the loses all other abilities is not part of the equipment. It's part of the trigger. So your mana rock doesn't tap for mana anymore, but your creatures that you're equipping still have all their abilities.
Yeah, it kind of reads like it's like, oh, they lose all their abilities. No, it's this rock loses that tap ability.
Yeah.
Here's one of the fan favorites. Sir Ginger, the Meal Ender. 2 mana for a 3/1 legendary artifact creature food knight. We got the final part of our story arc, right? The Ginger Brood.
The young hero arc.
Yeah. This is a rare. It says Sir Ginger, the Meal Ender, has trample, hexproof, and haste as long as the opponent controls a planeswalker. Okay, not that relevant. Whenever another artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on Sir Ginger and you scry 1. 2, tap, sack Sir Ginger, you gain life equal to its power.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of text that doesn't really mean a lot.
So when another artifact goes to the graveyard, that's mostly food, right? It's a food card that plays well with other food. Is kind of the idea. There's not very many other things that are going to trigger this.
There's like well, even I guess ginger brew's even a food, but yeah, that's one of the other examples.
Sure, yeah. I mean, the Scry 1 is a nice little bonus.
Yeah, it's still a 2-mana 3/1.
Right.
That, it can block. It's decent.
Yeah, it's not an over-the-top card by any means. I guess here's a way to frame this. Are you going to take this out of most packs, pick one, pack one as a colorless card?
No.
No, I don't think so either. I think it's flexible, but not ultimately that powerful. I think Sir Ginger ends up being about a C.
Yeah, like I think this might be worse than like Minstrosity, which is like a
Sure.
3/1 that dies and makes a food.
Sure. Yeah, cool card, but I might even bump it up to C+. It's got like enough little things going on. Like, you can sack it after it's kind of done its job, or it becomes a little bit irrelevant. Yeah, I'll give it a C+ to Sir Ginger.
Okay, I'm just gonna go with the C.
Agatha's Soul Cauldron. I think this is another F. 2 mana for legendary Mythic. A legendary artifact and Mythic, sorry. You can spend mana as though were any color to activate abilities of creatures you control. Creatures you control have +1. Creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have all abilities, all activated abilities of all creature cards exiled with Agatha's Soul Cauldron. It has a tap ability. Tap, exile target card from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Okay, let's read this backwards. I think that makes it more sense. So you can play this and exile a creature from a graveyard. When a creature card is exiled this way, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. Okay, so maybe not complete F, actually, reading that again.
Yeah, I was gonna say that ability it's instant speed.
Yes, yeah, totally. I actually forgot about that from reading this the first time. The creatures you control with +1/+1 counters on them have activated abilities of all creatures exiled with Soul Cauldron. That's gonna matter marginally. It's not gonna come up that much. And then you can spend mana abilities, flavor text kind of. Or no, not that relevant for us, I would say. It's there so that you can exile cards from your opponent's grave so that you can activate their abilities. There's not that many activated abilities though. So mostly you're looking at tap, exile a card from a graveyard, you put a counter on something, instant speed. How much do we like that?
I think this makes it into a few decks. I would give it like a D+.
Yeah, a D+ is around where I would put it to. Yeah, not quite enough, but it's a little clunky. It's a little finicky. Like, I think it's easy to imagine this like put a bunch of counters around just like starting on the turn you play it, but you would be kind of surprised how few creatures make their way to the graveyard by turn like 3, and so you're going to play this on turn 4, and by the time you play on turn 4, it's like, okay, well, this is still part of my mana, my early game mana that I'm spending doing nothing with that 2 mana, and you exile a card and you get a counter, and it's like it's just like a lot for not that much. So yeah, I'll join you in the same grade. D+, did you say?
I said D+.
Yeah. This next one I don't think is going to be a D+. Hilda. Yeah, weird. Hilda?
Hilda, maybe?
Might just be Hilda. Yeah. Hilda's Crown of Winter. That sounds more right. 3 mana for a legendary artifact at rare. 1, tap target creature. This ability costs 1 less to activate during your turn. So just that alone, it's a ice manipulator that can't tap lands, but is cheaper on your turn. 0 mana on your turn. And it also has 3, sacrifice the crown. No tap ability, just sacrifice it. Draw a card for each tapped creature your opponents control.
Yeah, this card is pretty good.
That's a nice one. Yeah. It's really nice.
This is the and the fact that you could tap on their turn means like you're going to be hitting untapped creatures all the time with this, so it's going to trigger all of your blue-white synergies.
Yeah, that last ability is interesting because you're not going to activate it that much, but I think there is quite a bit of threat of activation there, where your opponent's like, okay, well, I'm trying to race you, or I'm trying to kill you, and what was the card from Lord of the Rings, the saga, the blue saga, that drew a card for each of your opponent's tapped creatures? It this exact same ability on the 3rd chapter.
Yeah, Scroll of Isildur.
Scroll of Isildur. That was kind of like a thing where your opponent had to stop attacking for a turn unless they wanted you to draw a bunch of cards. And this doesn't have that window where it's like, okay, I stop attacking 1 turn, and then, I weather the storm, basically. This is just here forever, hanging over your opponent's head. And they can't...
Yeah, you can also, like, end of turn tap, untap, tap, and then sack it.
Yeah, this is the card that Yeah, I was saying with Sir Ginger, are you going to take this over basically everything? Pick one, pack one. This one, you will.
Yeah, this is like a B
Yeah,
plus,
I would give this
A
a B
minus,
plus. Yeah,
maybe.
B plus for the crown.
B plus.
All right, now we're getting into some gold cards. We've got Will, Scion of Peace here. This is 1 blue white for a 2/4 vigilance at Mythic. Mythic for this card that's not that exciting. Actually, it's tap. Spells you cast this turn that are white and or blue cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Activate only as a sorcery.
Yeah, notably, not sure if you picked up on this, but there's not an equal number of rares and mythics for each color, and there's also not an equal number of gold rares and mythics
Yeah,
for
it's
each
kind of
color.
weird.
Usually when they do that, there's some purpose behind it. Like there's been quite a few sets that have done that, but just noting it.
So we've got 3 mana 2/4 vigilance, essentially. There's not a lot of food in blue or whites, if any, and there's a little.
Well, most of the food is artifact. Well, a bunch of it is artifact based. So there's
Oh, that's true.
some,
Yeah,
but
yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's. I shouldn't say you're not gonna have it in blue white. And also some white cards just gain life, so it's gonna come up sometimes. But even when you do that thing, like you're spending mana to gain life a lot of the time, anyways, right? You're cracking a food, and that puts you up a mana. But by the time you're doing that, it's not like this isn't an explosive mana dork where you play it on 3 and it's like, oh no, they can't let them untap with it. It's more just like you're gonna get a little bit of mana here and there in the late game.
yeah. So this is like C on for stats.
Yeah, I always give this. Yeah, 2/4 vigilance, just to see. And then we've got the oh man, adventures here. That's right. So just like we had with the uncommons, where there was some actual gold uncommons and some adventures with mixed colors, right? The adventure is one color, the creature is the other. We've got the same thing here at rare. So the first one here is Twinning Twins. It's 2 blue for a 4/4 fairy wizard at rare. The creature side is a flying vigilance ward 1. So 4 mana, flying vigilance ward 1. Okay, that's pretty nice. The instant Swift Spiral, 1 and a white. Exile target non-token creature. Return to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. And that's anybody's. That's not just yours, right? You can exile. You can blink one of your opponent's things.
Yeah, I picked up on this, and of course, chat has too. It's only got one N, so it's not the Twinning Twins. It's the Twining Twins.
Oh, the Twining Twins. My bad. Thank you. I misread that.
Which is the thing they're carrying is like
the twine. Yeah,
the rope for twine. Yeah.
Good card.
But giving you a hard time over pronunciations aside,
That's a good.
This card is also great.
Yeah, so one of the things about the 4 and 5 mana cards that you want to consider is how resilient are they to interaction spells when they come down if they don't have an enter the battlefield effect. And Ward 1 really is like that. That's enough. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but the fact that your opponent might not be able to cast their 4 mana removal spell on this when you cast it, the turn you cast it. That's going to push it over the edge in a lot of game states. Flying Vigilance 4/4. Oh, we used to pay 5 mana for that and not have Ward 1 or an adventure. And then this adventure, you get to re-trigger an ETB or blow out a double block or stop lethal damage or something, right? Like the fact that it can target your opponent's stuff is so big.
Do you want to put this as high as A, or is that too high?
No, I was going to give it an A. A for Twining Twins. Okay. We've got another blue-white card here. This is Hilda herself. Hilda of the Icy Crown. 2 white-blue for a 3/4 at Mythic. Legendary creature, human warlock. Whenever you tap an untapped creature an opponent controls, you can pay 1. When you do, you choose 1. You either make a 4/4 blue and white elemental creature token, or you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, or you scry 2 and draw a card.
Yeah, I just love that they have cards like this. I talked about it at the beginning of the review where there's a deck that looks a bit worse, and they're like, here, this is the card that makes you draft this deck.
Yeah, that's this.
So this card is great.
It's a payoff. It's a heck of a payoff.
Yeah.
So what do you want to give this?
Do you want to give it a build around grade? Or?
Yeah, like build around A?
Yeah,
great.
Sure.
Cool. We've got, next up, Likeness Looter. So this is blue-black for a 1/1 flyer at rare. It's a fairy, as most blue-black gold cards are. Tap, draw a card, then discard a card. That's where the looter comes in, the looter in the name. And then it's got an ability X, not tapping, just X. Likeness Looter becomes a copy of target creature card in your graveyard with mana value X, except it has flying and this ability to change it to something else. Activate this only as a sorcery. So we're paying 2 mana for a 1/1 flying Merfolk Looter, right? Just like the tap, draw a card, discard a card. And then the thing with Merfolk Looter was that, okay, in the late game, sure, maybe you're looting away lands. It's good to do that if you're drawing your lands. If you're drawing the spells you need, it's going to upgrade your spells sometimes, but a lot of times you're just going to be like, all right, tap it and see if I get something better than my hand. Sometimes you just don't have, you don't want to do that, or you're not actually going to upgrade your cards by that much. And so then you can turn into a big creature. So, yeah, nice little design.
Yeah, so you gain the X ability, but you lose the loot ability when you use that.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, didn't take that in.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of Vohar from DMU.
Yeah, that was a good card. I love
Which is a
Vohar.
great card. Yeah, the free looting is just so much better than paying mana to loot.
Yes, definitely.
The fact that it's a fairy is also relevant for a bunch of cards.
So
and
it's
I want to give this like A-.
Yeah, I would give it a B+, I think. Just being a X1 just kind of makes me a little bit gun shy on it, but it's a strong card.
Yeah, another 1 toughness rare.
Yep. Cruel Somnophage. So this is 1 and a black for a Star Nightmare. It's got it's a rare. And it says, Cruel Somnophage's power and toughness are equal to the number of creature cards in all graveyards. It's also an adventure. Can't wake up. 1 and a blue for a sorcery. Target player mills 4 cards.
Yeah, so there is a bunch of just random exile graveyard cards, but most of them are like rares or uncommons. So
yeah, you can't just kill this randomly most times.
Yeah. But this card is going to normally be quite big. It kind of reminds me of like the bunny we saw, the first card we did, but just a little bit worse.
I was thinking quite a bit worse. So there was, what was it called? the Tarmogoyf, the like it was a Sultai Tarmogoyf from DMU, and that card was pretty bad. And that also fueled itself.
You can't play this on turn 2 either. Yeah, you're probably right. It probably is quite a bit worse.
Yeah, I was gonna give this card like a D+, honestly, because I think there's yeah. What were you gonna give it?
I think just to be 2 grades different, I'll go with a C.
Okay, yeah. I just think it's really bad early, obviously, and let's just say you cast on turn 4. Okay, so you mill you or them, depending on who. Like, I don't think it matters too much. Maybe if you have a high creature count in your deck, you're going to mill yourself, if you know that information. And let's just say it's a 3/3 after that happens. I don't think that's that good, because then it has to, like, it's going to grow as the game goes on, and it's a fine draw later on, but not that exciting. So I'm going to stick with my lower D grade, I think.
Yeah. Because you can't, like, you almost never want to cast this as a 2-drop, and the adventure doesn't actually do anything.
You want to join me? Can I talk you down?
Yeah.
Okay.
You talked me down.
Cool.
Yeah, you talked me all the way down. I'm going to join you at D+.
We've got Talion, the Kindly Lord. 2 blue-black for a legendary creature, Fairy Noble at Mythic. It's a 3/4 flyer. That's a good stat line. As Talion, the Kindly Lord, enters the battlefield, you choose a number between 1 and 10. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value, power, or toughness equal to the chosen number, that player loses 2 life and draw a card. And you draw a card, sorry. Wow.
This is going to be a real pay attention and paper check card.
Yeah, for sure.
Us arena drafters are spoiled when it comes to stuff like this.
So, what are you going to be calling most of the time? Like 3? Do you think 3 is 2 maybe?
2, I think.
Yeah, because like your opponents, if they're building their deck well, are going to have a lot of 2-drops, and even 4 and 3 mana creatures are going to have 2 toughness some amount of the time.
Yeah, it's probably because it's a 4-drop. Probably 3 is the safer number.
Yeah, very cool.
There's a bunch of 4/3s for 4 and a bunch of 3-drops. Yeah, I think 3 is probably the default number.
Yeah, I think so too. And definitely, this is a card that gets way better in best of 3. Like once you know games 2 and game 3 what your opponent has, that's the, like you said, that's just the check, right? Being like, all right, what do they have?
This is also a card where it's hard to tell exactly how good it is because your opponent's not going to play stuff into it.
Right, exactly. Unless they feel like it's, an appropriate. It's appropriate for you to draw a card and then lose to life for the privilege of casting that card.
It might be correct against a red deck to name 4 just because there's 2 burn spells that kill it for 4 mana.
Yeah. It's gonna be a skill tester for sure. This is a really cool card. I really like the design on this one.
Yeah. I think it's quite good though.
Yeah, I do too. I want to give it an A minus, I think.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well.
Awesome. Yeah, A minus battalion. We've got Rowan, the other twin here. Rowan, Sign of War. 1 black red for another mythic legendary creature. It's got Menace and it's a 4/2. So 3 mana 4/2 Menace. The ability here is the inverse of Rowan, or sorry, of Will. Tap spells you cast this turn that are black and or red cost X less to cast, where X is the amount of life you lost this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. So not going to be an ability we care about very much, but 3 mana 4/2 Menace. That's a good aggressive stat line.
Yeah, slightly better than a 2/4 vigilance for 3, I think. No, but not by a lot.
I would say meaningfully better. I think, yeah, I think we gave Will a C. I was going to give Rowan a, yeah, I guess C plus is not that much higher. But I think, yeah, maybe I'm just splitting hairs here. But it's another mythic that's just like, look at this cool text that's not that relevant for us. So, yeah, C plus for Rowan.
Sure.
Decadent Dragon. The 2 red, another adventure creature. 2 red for a 4/4 flying trample dragon at rare. It says whenever Decadent Dragon attacks, create a treasure token. And it's got an adventure side, expensive taste. 2 and a black for an instant. Exile the top 2 cards of target opponent's library face down. You may look at and play those cards for as long as they remain exiled. You have to spend the mana, like the actual appropriate mana, but of course the idea here is the dragon's going to make the treasures for you.
Yeah, we've seen a bunch of 4/4 flyers for 4 at rare, and they're all amazing.
Yeah. This one, man. Honestly, you'd be very happy with the non-adventure. Like, it just didn't have an adventure. Just 4/4 flyer, attacks, make a treasure. That's good.
Yeah, this is another A, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. So play pattern-wise, it's kind of interesting. Because it does curve into itself, but are you going to cast Expensive Taste on turn 3? Or are you just going to play a creature? I guess that's
not if you have a 3-drop, I don't think.
I think it mostly depends on what your opponent's. Well, I was gonna say if they're slower, you just want to play your 3-drop to attack, right? If they're not on board, you're not gonna actually want to, like, you have the time to cast Expensive Taste, but it's probably correct just to play your creature and attack them. So yeah, it's a nice little upside. You know, of course, when you draw it late, you get both. A for Decadent Dragon.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. It's somewhere between A and A minus. Yeah, I'm gonna go A.
I think so too. Next up, we've got Questing Druid. So this is the green-red adventure at rare. 1 and a green for a 1/1. It says whenever you cast a spell that's white, blue, black, or red, you put a +1/+1 counter on Questing Druid. So anything but a green spell. Or it could be a green gold spell. And it says the adventure is Seek the Beast. 1 red for an instant. Exile the top 2 cards of your library until until your next end step, you may play those cards.
Yeah, the power creep of adding an adventure to Questing Dryad or whatever it's called.
Quirion Druid or Quirion Dryad? Yeah.
Whatever, Quirion Dryad, yeah.
Yeah, it's finally been outmodded after, 20 years or something. So, this is a good effect, though. Like, it's... Good might be a little bit optimistic, but I was warning yesterday about these creatures that start out small and kind of promise to grow over the course of the game. And I think when they start at 2, you're a little bit more willing to put that card in your deck and be like, all right, it's a little bit small early, but you get the train rolling as soon as possible. Like, every single card you cast, it's going to grow. Well, not every single card. A lot of the cards you cast are going to grow this. And if this turns into a 3/3 at some point, you're quite happy. And of course, the adventure helps you get there.
Yeah, it's weird that the templating, there's a bunch of cards that only say you can play them until end of turn in this set, and then there's also this one that's end of next turn. So, annoying to track, but also notably that this is just the better wording on this one.
Yeah, I think this card is a solid little card, but not over the top. I would give this one a B-.
Yeah, that sounds fair.
Cool. Next up, we've got Agatha of the Vile Cauldron. This is green-red for a 1/1 mythic. Activated abilities, legendary creature too. Activated abilities of creatures you control cost X less to activate, or X is Agatha of the Vile Cauldron's power. This effect can't reduce the mana in that cost to less than 1 mana. And then it's got a 6 mana ability for green-red. Other creatures you control get +1/+1, gain trample, and haste until end of turn.
Yeah, it's a 6 mana ability, but it's really a 5
right?
or less mana ability, so...
This seems like a constructed card to me.
You think it's unplayable in Limited?
So, are you ever putting this card in your deck when you have no activated abilities?
like I mean it's kind of like the whatever the unicorn from
Oh, like the one mana pump
Golden
unicorn?
Shade or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, but this one is, I think, substantially worse. Being 2 mana 1/1 instead of 1 mana 1/2, and the pump ability being more expensive and not giving vigilance.
Yeah,
I
I was gonna go like I was gonna go like D plus for this. I think it's
Yeah,
playable.
that's fine. Yeah. I was gonna say maybe not a 0, but not a high grade. D plus. Agree. We got Pollen Shield Hair up next as the green-white rare adventurer. 1 and a white for a rare rabbit. It's a 2/2, and it says creature tokens you control get +1/+1. And like you noted yesterday, heck of a lot of tokens in this set. The set is just littered with tokens. The sorcery side, Hair Raising, Hare, is a green sorcery. It says target creature you control gains vigilance and gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the number of creatures you control.
Yeah, this is one. I think you're just gonna play this for the white side most of the time, but if you can add green mana to this too, it's even better.
Yep.
It's really good.
So let's just quickly think of the color combos here. In green white, what are our tokens in green white? We've got
Knights.
knights. We've got
Knights are in all the white pairs, and then in like white red and white black you have rats mostly. I think
white blue. There's some fairies here and there, so it's gonna be a relevant ability. What do you want to give this one?
We're gonna grade it as if you're green white because that's where it's much better, and that's where it's gonna be played most of the time. In green white though, that adventure is pushing a lot of damage.
Really is, yeah.
So I would be thinking green white. I'm gonna give this like A minus maybe.
Yeah, that's where I was gonna go too. Like the you put this on a creature with a monster roll or an evasive creature, and even if you don't, like even if you just put it on your 2/2, your worst attacker, it turns that into an attacker this turn, and most likely makes them chump block or makes them have a trade they don't want to make. So, yeah, I like this card a lot. Next up, another green-white card, Yenna Redtooth Regent. So this is 2 green-white for a 4/4. Legendary creature, rare. 2 and tap. Choose target enchantment you control that doesn't have the same name as another permanent you control. Create a token of it, except it isn't legendary. If that token is an aura, untap Yenna and then scry 2. You can only activate this as a sorcery.
Yeah, that ability is definitely relevant. Like sometimes you see these weird trinkety abilities where it's like for commander or constructed, but there's a lot of enchantments in this format between rolls and the bonus sheet. You're almost always going to have at least one thing you can copy.
Right. Yeah,
but you can only copy it once.
Yeah, this is it's another one of the okay, hope I untap with it kind of cards, right? It does have a nice upside. I'm a little lower on this one just because it's a little finicky, it's a little setup-y, it's no ETB on your 4 mana creature. It blocks well. That's I'm giving that credit, 4 mana 4/4. But maybe I'm gonna be yeah, I is it a hot take if I give it a low grade? I think they still count as a hot take. I'm gonna go C+ on Yenna, and I could just be wrong.
Okay, I think you're gonna go even lower than that. I think C+ is fair for it's basically a 4 mana 4/4.
Right, yeah, with some upside. We've got Ariette here of the Charmed Apple. Well, her name we heard a lot yesterday, and here she is. So this is 1 black-white for a 2/4 legendary creature at Mythic. Each creature that's enchanted by an aura you control can't attack you or planeswalkers you control. And it says at the beginning of your end step, each opponent loses X life and you gain X life, where X is the number of auras you control. Wow. Whew. So turns all of
she's
your...
got the apple that crashed your screen, so luckily it hasn't happened again.
That's right. Yeah. My computer crashed. For those who aren't privy to the very tightly edited version of the podcast we put out yesterday, when we got to her apple, my computer just like completely gave out. We had to restart everything. So so she turns all your rolls into pacifisms essentially. That's nice.
Or like especially you're already going to potentially have cursed rolls on opponents' things, so that works as well.
And that drain ability. And she's in the right colors too. Like black, white have
right colors, and good stats on her too. Like a 2/4 for 3 is well statted.
Yeah, I like Ariette. I'd give her a B+.
Sure.
Yeah. Devouring Sugarmaw, a really funny card. This is 2 black. This is the black-white adventure rare. It's a 6/6 Menace Trampler. So 4 mana for a 6/6 Menace Trampler. Downside, of course, here is at the beginning of your upkeep, you can sacrifice an enchantment, artifact, or token. If you don't, not that bad of a downside. You just tap the Sugar Maw. It's not like you have to sacrifice it. Not like it. No, this isn't a 1999 card. It doesn't deal you 6 damage. And the adventure side here is have for dinner. 1 and a white for an instant. You make a 1/1 white human creature token and a food token.
Yeah, so this is one of the... We talked about some of these cards you're just going to want to play the creature side and not worry about the adventure. This is one where you almost have to play the adventure first.
Right, and the adventure is really good. Like in combo with this side, like you get 2 attacks out of it. You also like it's an instant, so you can ambush your next one if you really wanted to or something. And yeah, this is this. Sometimes these Punisher cards are. Well, actually, more time than not. These Punisher cards are actually... Sorry, not Punisher cards, but these, like, big creatures that ask you to tap something or have some sort of downside. They tend to play actually pretty well, better than you might expect. And I don't think this is any different for this one. I think this card's just good.
Yeah, I like this card. Like, even if you can't adventure it, it's not, like, one of those unplayable cards.
Chat brings up that the have for dinner side it's 2 mana, trigger your celebration. Just that's a nice little upside, too. Sweet. Yeah, so A- for the Sugar Maw?
I think I'm going to go B+.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. Next up, we've got Mosswood Dread Knight. 1 and a green for a 3/2 trample. It's another adventure rare. It says, when Mosswood Dread Knight dies, you can cast it from your graveyard as an adventure until the end of your next turn. So that's a whole turn cycle here. And the adventure side is Dread Whispers. 1 and a black for a sorcery. You draw a card, you lose a life.
Yeah, this card's great.
Yeah, fantastic. Ooh, man, it's just so hard to deal with. I mean, you can do something like a enchantment-based removal spell or something, but this thing's not going to block Shirley very often. It's does not die. It's resilient against removal spells. It's just such a lot of value on your 2 mana card.
Is this an A- or an A for you?
Yeah, I think there's enough going on here that I would give the Dread Knight an A-. Yeah, let's go A- for the Mosswood Dread Knight. We've got Frostbane Troll here. This is 2 green-black for a 4/4 troll at rare. When it enters the battlefield, you create a monster roll token attached to it. And the roll token, the monster roll, of course, is +1/+1. It has trample. Also has an ability. 1, sacrifice an aura attached to the Frostbane Troll, and the troll fights target creature you don't control. If that creature would die this turn, you exile it instead. Activate this only as a sorcery.
Yeah, so it comes equipped with its own fight, but it does fight as a 4/4. But then if you can put another roll on it, you're just setting up your little machine gun here.
Yeah, wow. 5. It's just a 4 mana 5/5 trampler too. Yeah, this card's great. I think this card's just an A.
Yep, I agree.
And I would splash. This is like a card worth splashing for too. So we haven't seen a ton of gold cards that are like that, but this one for sure.
I mean, I think the last card.
Sure.
I think there's a lot of them.
No, maybe that's not even true. Yeah, maybe we just haven't been pointing them out. So yeah, I think you're right. Next up, we've got Elusive Otter. So this is the blue-green rare adventure. The otter, the creature side is a single blue mana for a 1/1 prowess that says creatures with power less than Elusive Otter's power can't block it. And then the adventure side is green. It says it's Grove's Bounty, X and a green sorcery. Distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control.
Yeah, so it's like reverse skulk, is it?
Yeah, reverse skulk. Okay, it can only be blocked by the small things or the big things. Sorry.
Yeah. Making this longer than it might need to be, but would you play this if you can't cast the adventure side?
I think so. Like I would probably want to play it in a blue-red deck, not anything else most likely when you have a lot of spells. But just like 1/1 prowess that has a pseudo evasion ability, I think it's going to be good enough.
Yeah. Okay. And then with the green side is quite good.
Yeah,
I like that
strong.
a lot.
Yeah, it's just.
So is this B+ or A- for you?
I would go B+ on this one. Yeah, B+ for Elusive Otter.
I think that's fair.
The Goose Mother, another fan favorite from this set. X blue-green for a rare legendary creature bird hydra. So it's a 2/2 flyer. So it's if you just blue and a green, 2/2 flyer. It says the Goose Mother enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters on it. So pay more, get more. When the Goose Mother enters the battlefield, create half X food tokens rounded up. Whenever the Goose Mother attacks, you may sacrifice a food. If you do, draw a card.
Yeah, so this is kind of a callback to Hydroid Crisis, I guess.
Yeah.
Where the abilities are a bit worse, but the creature is bigger because it's a 2/2 instead of a 0/0.
Is this one just an A plus?
Yeah, probably. I mean, even I think I'm happy just casting this on like for X equals 1.
Yeah. Yeah, it's rounded up. Unlike Hydro Crisis rounds down, right?
Yeah, and you get a 3/3 flyer for 3, and you get a food token and potentially draw a card. Like that's already really good.
And yeah, once again, very splashable too. So yeah, I'm gonna give A plus to Goose Mother. We've got Scalding Viper next. This is the red-blue adventure rare. 1 or red for a 2/1. Whenever an opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, ooh, Scalding Viper deals 1 damage to target. Oh, to that player. Sorry, I thought it was gonna be to creature. So yeah, whenever your opponent casts a spell with mana value 3 or less, Scalding Viper deals 1 damage to that player. Nice little upside. Gonna ding them a few points. The sorcery side, Steam Clean. 1 and a blue. Return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand.
Yeah, both sides of like that ping will happen more often than you expect, and we've mentioned how incidental pings are often pretty good. Like I guess the red side is kind of similar to the card we just saw from Lord of the Rings, the Flamesmith.
Mm-hmm.
But adding the adventure to it makes it very good.
Right. If you just think of this as 4 mana, bounce a thing 2/1, like it's a mana war that costs an additional mana but is more flexible and has a little bit of upside, it's a good card, right? So I would give Scalding Viper a B.
Yeah, I was going to say B as well.
The blue-red gold rare is a saga, The Apprentice's Folly. First 2 chapters are the same. They're choose target non-token creature you control that doesn't have the same name as a token you control. Okay. Create a token that's a copy of it, except it isn't legendary. It is a reflection in addition to its other types and has haste. All right, a lot of words. Let's just break that down quickly. Basically, that's just you choose something that you haven't chosen already with this, and you get a new copy of it, a hasty copy of it. The last ability, the downside ability, sacrifice all of your reflections. So the idea with this card...
What's the joke, Alex?
You bargain it away, of course, right? You don't want to have that third one go off. You get to keep your 2 hasty reflections. How happy do you think you're going to be if you don't get to bargain it away?
Not very happy.
Right.
Yeah, like temporary tokens, it's not going to make anything huge, and you're only getting 2 attacks with one and 1 attack with the other.
Mm-hmm. And once again, there is slightly a lower density of enter the battlefield creatures in the set because adventurers kind of take up that space of value creatures. So I agree with you. I think you're gonna. This is a bargain build around. But if you do have this, like if you can build around this and have a lot of bargain cards in your deck, it's really, really strong. 4 mana, make 2 clones, hasty clones.
Yeah, but you need to bargain it either... Well, you basically need to bargain it the turn after you play this.
Yeah, on turn... yeah, exactly.
Or like on your upkeep of turn 3.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a very small window where you can bargain it away. And I think that's a pretty big knock on
I think so too. So build around B? Like if you have maybe 6 bargain cards in your deck or something around there?
I don't even think 6 is enough, but I also think if you have the number I'm thinking of, it's also like better than a B. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, yeah,
like
totally.
weird.
Yeah, so it's more like a build around A minus or something.
I'll just go build around B plus.
Okay, cool.
And then people listen to this instead of just looking at the grade.
Totally. Red White up next. This is the Red White Adventure Heartflame Duelist. 1 and a white for a 3/1. It says instant and sorcery spells you control have lifelink. And the adventure side, it's Heartflame / 2 and a red instant. Heartflame / deals 3 damage to any target.
So this is the Bone Crusher Giant of the set.
Right, it's like the reverse, right? Because Bone Crusher Giant curves into itself, but this one, not so much, unfortunately.
Yeah, this one's like, hey, we're gonna make it awkward, but I don't care. This card's still
great. It's still great, yeah, exactly. You're gonna, you on turn 5, you can just cast this as like 3/1 comes in, deals 3. You could just go cast this on turn 3. You have a 3/1 next turn. The spells you have control of lifelink. That's also not irrelevant text. Like in red white, we mentioned there's a lot of burn in red, so don't think that's unmeaningful or anything. And it's kind of funny. A lot of these rare adventures, well, adventures in general, but the rare ones I think really is pronounced with. They are designed to play well with additional copies of each other, right? Where it's just like, oh, okay, well, you cast this early, and then if you have other duelists, you cast the slash on turn 3, and then maybe you cast your other duelist after, or the otter, right? It grows itself, or the basically all of them. They are designed to play well with each other. we're not going to get that effect for the rares, obviously unlimited, but just something you know. So what do you want to give
As
us?
someone who opens like tons of Sunfalls, I don't think you can claim that you're not going to get lucky and get like 2 or 3 of
That's
these.
true. That's true. I might end up with additional copies. I am one to get lucky from time to time.
A minus.
Yeah, A minus sounds good to me. That's what I'd give Bone Crusher Giant too. And we have Kellen the Fey Blooded, another rare adventure actually, or mythic adventure for red white. 2 and a red for a legendary creature, human fairy. It's a 2/2 double strike. And it says other creatures you control get +1/+0 for each aura and equipment attached to Kellen. So attached to this creature. Then sorcery, the white sorcery, birthright boon. 1 or white. Search your library for an aura or equipment card. Reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle.
Yeah, it's weird because that sorcery is not gonna find your auras a lot of the time, right?
Mhm.
Because if you have your creatures that have roles attached to them as adventures, you can't actually find those. And then the auras you are gonna play might be like the pacifism, which you don't really want to put on Kellen.
Right.
So not saying that makes it a bad card, but it's not as well set up as it might be in some other formats because there's not a lot of equipment in this set, or like auras in. I can't even think of a single aura in red white that pumps your creature. There's a green one, but I can't think of a red or white one.
Maybe when we get to the bonus sheet. I think this is going to be more relevant
Oh, that's
once we
right.
get to the bonus sheet.
Yeah. But still, very, very, very few.
Definitely. So
you're looking at a 2/2 double strike, and then you're looking at potentially drawing a card if you have like a pacifism in your deck.
Yeah, and well, don't overlook the ability too. Your creatures get plus, like you put a roll on Kellen here, pumps all your creatures. Right?
Yeah. As long as you have rolls, yes. You won't
Yeah.
be able to search one, but you can still get the benefit for it for sure.
Yeah, and I think you're gonna have rolls in most of your decks, like in a good number of them. So with that in mind, I want to give Kellen like an A minus.
An A minus?
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna go B plus.
Okay, yeah, fair enough. I just think that sometimes that birthright boon's gonna be relevant. Sometimes this is just gonna take over, just to like put tons of damage on the table. I guess something worth noting is, of course, the anti-synergy with rolls is that you can't keep stacking them like you might want to, right? To give your creatures even more power. Let's go to, I think, our last card of the main set here. We've got Baluna Grand Squall. It's a teamer adventure. So this is green, blue, red. The creature side, it's a mythic. The creature side is a 4/4 trample that says permanent spells you cast that have adventures cost 1 less to cast. And the instant side, Seek Thrills, 2 blue, green, red. Instant mill 7 cards, then put all adventures milled from the among cards into your hand.
Yeah, it's good, but I honestly, for like a 3-color signpost mythic, is it weird that I was kind of like expecting a little better?
I was too, yeah, definitely. It's yeah, it's fine. The thing is, you're not gonna get it.
Good.
The creature side is very good when you play it early, but since it's a 3-color card, you're not gonna play it early that often.
Well, there's a lot of fixing in the set, like a lot.
Yeah.
So I think there's so many filters that I think it's pretty easy to assume that in like a red green or red blue deck, you can cast this on turn 4.
Okay. Well, but you're probably, it's kind of, I guess it's gonna depend game to game, but I think you ideally are casting Seek Thrills first.
Sure.
Yeah.
I want to give it like B.
I was gonna go a little lower. I was just gonna give it a C plus.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit hard to get into your deck. I mean, no, you said there's fixing. But I'm not that enthused about picking up fixing if you're not doing it already to play this card, right? It's kind of the way I would think it. But all right, so that's gonna bring us to the bonus sheet. Just like a lot of sets that we've had recently, Eldraine has a bonus sheet. This time it's enchantments, and there's gonna be a lot of Fs and a lot of, well, I was going to say maybe a lot of As, but that's actually probably less true. I know there's going to be a lot of Fs on this sheet. I think there's, it's about like 50-50 Fs and not Fs. And there are some really good cards here, but most of them are sort of like in Brothers War, where it's like, okay, I can see a place where that belongs. It's like, okay, I have a deck for that. The first one we have here is, I think, an F, land tax. We've got a single white mana for an enchantment at Mythic. At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls more lands than you, you may search your library for up to 3 of them, or 3 basic lands, and reveal them and put them into your hand, then shuffle. Any objections to the F?
Oh, land tax is very powerful.
It is, but I think you have to be doing something with the lands.
Ooh, I'm not gonna go F for land
Okay,
tax,
okay.
and
So yeah, no, this is great. Tell me what you like about it. Like, where would you put this deck, or where would you put this card, and like what kind of deck?
I mean, like a slower white deck, which there's not going to be a ton of those, so maybe
Hmm.
something like black. Um, but yeah, I mean, sometimes it just does nothing, and that's I don't know. This is the boomer in me calling this, but I'll just go D on this,
Let
and we'll
Let me give you this. Would you side it in on the draw?
oh for sure.
Okay, yeah. That's where I think we can agree. I think on the draw, if you are playing best of three, you side this in. The thing is, though, it's a little bit awkward still because you need to know your opening hand, or else it doesn't do that much, unless you're just behind on lands. And you can like stop yourself from playing lands at some point. But I just want to put it out there that this is not just a slam dunk card or anything. Next up, we got Blind Obedience. This is 1 and a white for an enchantment at rare. It says artifacts and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped, and it also has Extort, which is an ability from Gate Crash way back when. Whenever you cast a spell, you may pay either white or black, and if you do, each opponent loses a life, and you gain that much life. So this is a card that you probably have some experience with in your time playing this. Gate Crash. This is a set I know you drafted a lot. You played it at the PT. What do you think about Blind Obedience?
Yeah, Gate Crash was the last PT I played in before I missed the last two for my wedding and another wedding. But Blind Obedience was a really good card in Gate Crash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does this play
I'm
out?
not sure it holds up to be quite as good as it was back then, but definitely not an F.
No.
Although it is interesting that sometimes, in very few spots, that artifact and creatures your opponents control enter the battlefield tapped could be a downside if you have like the blue-white like tapper
Oh.
thing that wants to tap an untapped creature.
Sure.
But I think I'm gonna expect to play Blind Obedience in most of my white decks, so I think I'm gonna give it a C.
Yeah, that's what I would say too. I think you're not going to cut this very often. If you haven't played with Extort, it's deceptively powerful. Just every one of your cards having kicker drain your opponent for one. This is a card that plays pretty well in both aggro and control decks because the tap your opponent's creatures coming in tapped is good for aggro. So is the Extort, but it's good for both sides, right? Like in constructed, it's more of a card that like you can care about, like, oh, my opponent's haze creatures come in tapped. Limited, you're not going to care that much about. So if you had to say one or the other, are you putting this more in aggressive decks or controlling decks?
Aggressive decks.
Yeah, I would say so too. So
But the Extort matters more in control, so I think it's still good in both.
right, I agree. I would actually, I think I'm going to give it a C plus. I'm going to bump it up a little bit.
Okay.
Next up, we've got Dawn of Hope. 1 and a white for an enchantment at rare. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. And it's got an ability 3 and a white. Create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. So this is one from us that I've played, and I don't think you have. This is Guilds of Ravnica. Card's quite strong. Card, it looks a little slow. It's slow to get going, and you're like, okay, well, like how often am I going to be doing this? And in that set, there was a 1-mana 1/1 flying lifelink, which was a really good combo with this. But even still, there's a decent amount of life gain flying around. There's food, just the ability to make a lifelink soldier after you kind of emptied your hand. I think it's probably worse than it was back then. Limited has just gotten faster. You can't just sit around paying 4 mana to make a 1/1. But just like Blind Obedience, I think it's still a good card.
Yeah, I've played in sets that have like either 2 and a white or 3 and a white or even 1 and a white to like make a creature token, and they're usually deceptively good.
Right, and lifelink also pretty good. So I'm gonna start pretty high on Dawn of Hope, like relative anyways. I'm gonna give this a B. I could see this. Yeah, like I would have given this like a B plus back then. I think that's where it was. Here I'm a little bit more skeptical about it, but still a strong card.
Okay, I'm gonna go B minus.
We've got our first F here, or second F if you're Mark. Rest in peace. 1 and a white for enchantment. Rare. When it ETBs, exile all graves, and then nothing can ever go to the graveyard again. This is an F. No, we're not for us, so skip it.
Yep.
Another one that probably isn't for us. Greater Oromancy. 1 and a white for enchantment at Mythic. It says other enchantments you control have Shroud, and enchanted creatures you control have Shroud. So it doesn't, like, at first you're like, okay, that's kind of cool. My enchantments are protected. My enchanted creatures too. But then you think about it, and Shroud, for those who don't know, Shroud is worse quote-unquote worse hexproof, neither player can target the creature. So basically, if you put a roll on one of your creatures, you can never put another roll on that until the roll gets knocked off somehow, right? Which I don't actually think it's going to be that possible. They can destroy you could destroy the roll, right? So it means that you can't cast combat tricks on your Shroud creatures that are enchanted. Even still, like, even if with that wrinkle out of the way, say that wasn't true, this card just doesn't do that much. So I think this one's enough too.
Yep.
Cool. Karma Justice, 2 and a white for a rare. Whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy a target permanent that opponent controls. Also another F. Nice and quick. We've got Phyrexian Unlife, 2 and a white for a rare. You don't lose the game for having 0 or less life. As long as you have 0 or less life, all damage is dealt to you as though it had Infect. So this, in a way, gives you 10 more life, and often a little bit more, because the way the rules in this card work are, let's say you're at 2, and your opponent attacks you for 4, you'll go to 0, and you actually won't take an Infect just yet. You won't die. So you'll actually gain a little bit more value if your opponent attacks you with a really big creature that would be lethal. But we're not really playing 3 mana gain 10. That's not a card we're interested in, right?
No, this is another F, right?
Okay, yep, I agree. Leyline of Sanctity, 1 white for an enchantment. I guess they all are, so I don't have to keep saying that. At rare, these ley lines, they all have the text. If they're in your opening hand, you can just put them on the battlefield. The effect here is you have hexproof. Another F. We don't care that much. We're not getting thought seized every game. Smothering Tide, Commander Staple, 3 and a white for a mythic. Whenever an opponent draws a card, that player may pay 2. If that player doesn't, you create a treasure token. Just another F. You're not going to care too much about making treasures on turn 4, and it's just not for us once again. As Foretold, 2 and a blue for a rare enchantment. At the beginning of your upkeep, put a time counter on As Foretold. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with mana value X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. So basically, you play this on 3, you can cast a 0 drop. In the next turn, you can cast a 1, you can cast a 2, you can cast 3 as it goes on. It's like kind of a weird mana rock in a lot of ways. So this one isn't quite a 0 like the other ones are, but to make this card good, you have to be in a deck where you have like just a ton of card draw. You play this on turn 3, you're just like drawing a bunch of cards, and you're making mana off of this. So it's effectively an F, I would say. Correct? Would you agree?
Yes.
Okay,
yes. I am trying to keep up with the typing, and my Chrome seems to want to crash sometimes. But I am keeping up.
No worries. We'll get there. Do you need a second or?
Nope. No,
Okay, cool.
I'm okay.
Next one, Copy Enchantment. 2 and a blue for a rare. You may have Copy Enchantment enter the battlefield as a copy of any enchantment on the battlefield. That's very self-explanatory. This one's a little more interesting. Still not great, but definitely not unplayable. But maybe close.
It's close to an F.
Yeah, because you're just not gonna you're not gonna be copying something absurd. Sometimes you're just not gonna have a target for this. Yeah, you know what? I'm just gonna give this a responsible F. You just probably should.
I think 'cause none of the enchantments you copy create any board presence. So
right.
You've already cast the first one, and then so you don't really want to copy your own thing, and there's very few of your opponent's things you're gonna want to copy. So
yeah, maybe if there was enchantment creatures in the set, but there's not, so we won't care about that. Fraying Sanity, 2 and a blue for a rare. It's a curse, an aura curse. You enchant player. At the beginning of each end step, enchanted player mills X card, where X is the number of cards put into their graveyard from anywhere this turn. So it's like a mill support combo card. Another F, where just the support isn't here for this card. Intruder Alarm, 2 and a blue for a rare. Creatures don't untap during their controller's untap step. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield, untap all creatures. It's just another F. I saw some people brewing in the Limited Level Ups Discord, combos cool combos that are in this set that, basically 6 card combos to make this card good. So yeah, just not for us. I think if it only triggered on your creatures, only yours untapped, there's the conversation to be had, but untapping your opponent's creatures is just too bad. So another F.
Yeah, it's a card we'll leave to Sam Black.
Yeah, exactly. Rhystic Study. This one might surprise some folks. This is 2 and a blue for an enchantment at Mythic. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, you may draw a card unless that player pays 1. So, what is your take on this one? Because I've been doing a lot of the talking, and finally we get to one that we can actually talk about.
I just think it's another F.
I think so too. Yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting because this is a card that is very, very well known as kind of the bane of all Commander games everywhere. And in Limited, it's too It's 2-0 basically. Like your opponent can play around this. Yes, sometimes taxing your opponent is annoying, but if they don't pay for this once, you've paid 3 mana to cycle. If they don't pay for it twice, you've cast a divination, which that would be fine at that point, but your opponent's just not going to play into it that much. And yeah, sometimes you're going to be like, oh, okay, like my hand lines up in such a way where it's painful for me. I have to wait a little bit. But you can spend that time to wait a little bit because they've spent time casting this. They're not going to be under that much pressure. So just wanted to explain that. I agree on F, though. Oh no, I missed the card here. Before we did this, there was some cards that were in the wrong language. Does anybody this chat know this one? What is this? Is this Leyline of Anticipation?
That would make sense. Yeah, it has to be because it's not here. Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so yeah, this one is unfortunately we don't have the wording in front of us, but I think I know it off the top of my head. This is Leyline of Anticipation, 2 blue for an enchantment, rare. It's got the Leyline text. You can put it on the battlefield if it's in your opening hand, and the text is your spells have flash. No, who cares, right?
Yeah, another F.
Okay,
yeah.
Cool. Kindred Discovery, 3 blue for a mythic. As Kindred Discovery enters the battlefield, you choose a creature type. Whenever a creature you control of the chosen type enters the battlefield or attacks, draw a card.
Cruiser creature type, which could be rats, maybe, but no, still too expensive. Still enough.
Yeah, I think so too. I was thinking rats too, and that's, I kind of just wanted to touch on that because I know some folks are going to be like, oh, but what about rats? And yeah, the dream's there, but it's just on average you're just like not going to go off with this, right? So I'll also give this an F. Even with fairies, no, it's just too expensive. Yeah, we know it's not a tax, right? It's just not good. It's even in that deck, you rather play anything else. Honestly, I know it sounds like it's a fun thing to do, but it's not from a competitive standpoint. I don't think you should do this, right? Anyways, next up, Force Fruition, 4 blue for an enchantment at rare. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player draws 7 cards. Also,
yeah, this one's the first one we can actually talk about.
Yeah, for sure. You played with this probably more than I have, so let me hear it.
I don't remember playing with this card, so probably not. But basically, you give your opponent 3 spells to win the game.
Yes, exactly. That's the idea. Yeah. Really, really, really good against any controlling deck. They just cannot beat this card. Like your opponent. Yeah. So I don't think you would main this card though. I think this is probably not maybe you would though. I don't know. What do you think?
I was gonna give it like a D+. Like I'll play it sometimes, but like not super thrilled about it.
Yeah. I was gonna give it like a sideboard B- or something like that for like against the control decks. But you're right. You might make your way into your deck once in a while. We got Omniscience, 10 mana, Mythic enchantments. 7 blue. You can cast spells without paying their mana cost. Another F. We're just not getting that much mana. Moving on to black now. Oversold Cemetery. 1 in a black. This one's a rare. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you have 4 or more creature cards in your graveyard, you can return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So this one is interesting as well. I still think it's probably a bit too slow, because there's not a lot of self-mill in this set. If there was some where you can fill your grave up pretty quickly, I'd be into this, but it takes a little bit too long to get going for what's effectively the first time you trigger it, just you've paid 2 mana to raise that a creature.
This was a slam dunk first pick in Onslaught, though.
Absolutely.
Let me tell you that.
Yeah, great card back in the day.
It was fully constructed.
Yeah, when games went 25 turns or whatever. But I think in 2023, I'm gonna guess this is just another F.
I'm gonna go D on this.
Okay, yeah, that's fair. That's totally fair. It's got some application. I could see it being, again, just like Force Fruition, making its way into your deck, but it's not just one you're going to take often. Waste Not, 1 in a black for a rare. Whenever an opponent discards a card, a creature card, you make a 2/2 zombie. Whenever an opponent discards a land, you make black. Whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land, draw a card. Nope, another F for it's a discard build around. All right, here's a banger. This is the first, this is a real banger here. Bitter Blossom, 1 in a black, mythic. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose a life. You create a 1/1 black fairy rogue creature with flying, and it is a fairy. It's a tribal enchantment fairy if you care about that.
Yeah, so there will for sure be, because there's a bunch of Fairy Matters cards. Like your opponent, your opponent might try and kill your token in response. It's not gonna stop it.
Yeah. This is just one of the best limited cards of all time, like top 100 or something.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, it was really annoying and constructed too.
Yeah. I do think that it's probably worse here than it was in Morning Tide because, again, life loss is, we care a little bit more about life loss these days and we don't have a bunch of fairy payoffs. It's just less. But just here's how it plays. If you haven't played this card before, if you play this on turn 2, every single turn you get a 1/1 flyer, and that left unchecked, that's just going to kill your opponent. It's just an insurmountable advantage. And the 1 life, it matters, but the thing is, because you can just, if your opponent's attacking you with a 4/4, you can just chump block with that token each turn. So you're effectively taking 1 damage from a 4/4 rather than 4 damage. So it's not even that bad to lose the life on this card. I'm just gonna give Bird Blossom an A.
Yeah, I wrote down A for myself
Great.
as well.
Cool. Yeah, you could even bargain it away if you really wanted it to. Oppression, 1 black for a rare. Whenever a player casts a spell, that player discards a card. Another quick F. We've got Necropotence. We mentioned this before. Black, Mythic. Skip your draw step. Whenever you discard a card, exile that card from your graveyard. You can pay a life, exile the top card of your library face down, put the card into your hand at the beginning of the next end step. So this is another constructed card from back in the day, and it's we mentioned it with Ashiok for paying life, but yeah, it's just another F.
Is this an F?
I think so. Do you want to talk it up?
Yeah, kind of. Like, I'm not saying it's good, but you can. The main downside with Necropotence is you pay as much as you can that's comfortable, and then it locks you out.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Right? But you can just bargain it away.
You can just bargain it away. Okay. You know what? I didn't. For some reason, bargain didn't cross my mind.
So if you draw like 6 cards and then make it so that your deck's constructed in a way that you're very likely to draw a bargain card within those 6 cards.
Yeah.
Then you've just basically paid, triple black for draw 6, lose 6, where it's modular to whatever's comfortable. And there's also like food that can replenish this a little bit in black, and so I think there's going to be some decks where this is going to get played.
Yeah, okay. I could see it. I'm still going to give it an F for now, but I will be very happy to be wrong because this is a cool card.
Okay, I am going to give it a D.
All right, our next card up is yet another Leyline. This one's Leyline of the Void. 2 black for a rare. It's got the Leyline text, and it says if a card would be put into an opponent's graveyard from anywhere, exile it instead. Once again, we got an F. This one's interesting, though. Grave Pact. 1 black. This one's Mythic. Whenever a creature you control dies, each other player sacrifices a creature.
Yeah, this card, again, used to be a bomb. That's why, it's really hard to reevaluate all these in the scale of 2023. Triple black is rough, but you also have, like, rats, and this card is going to be still good, I think.
Yeah, I don't think it's like an A+ A-level bomb, but I think this is, like, still a good card. I would give Grave Pact a B+.
A B+?
Yeah.
I don't think I was going to go that high.
How does your opponent ever beat this card?
Yeah.
So what's your hesitation on it? Just like it's a 4-mana enchantment that doesn't do anything really that much when it comes down? I mean, it does something.
And it doesn't affect the board, and it's if your opponent's, like, if you've traded your 2-drop and then you play a 3-drop and then they have a removal spell, you could just have no board when this comes out.
Mm-hmm. That's true. Yeah, there's a fail case for sure.
Or like your rats won't die, right? Like because they can't block, and your opponent's just going to let them through.
Well, you can sacrifice them though. Like Bargain makes this a little bit better, and also just like
but then that's like multiple hoops, because normally you want this you play it, and then it's like your opponent just can't attack, right? Mm-hmm. And if you just have a bunch of rats, that's not the case.
I still think it's good enough though. Yeah, this is one I could be wrong on for sure, but I'm gonna stay with my B+.
Okay, I'm gonna go C+.
Okay, yeah, no, that's totally reasonable. Black definitely is a cost still. Polluted Bonds up next. Rare. 3 black. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under an opponent's control, that player loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Basically another F. Like, it's you cast it. If this is like a 2-mana card, it would be busted. 5 mana means that your opponent just doesn't have to play lands if they don't need to, and if they really need to, they're probably okay paying this life once or twice. So, not a good card.
Yeah, just another F.
Sanguine Bond, 3 black for a rare. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. So, it's interesting, but I still think it's probably not good. Like, you play it with food. That's the idea.
No, it's 5 mana. Like it's
It's just too much. Just too much setup. Goblin Bombardment. Okay, here's a banger. So 1 in a red for a rare. Sacrifice a creature. Goblin Bombardment deals 1 damage to any target. And now we're talking.
Yeah, I think this one will be pretty good. So this is, we talked about ways on the bonus sheet of turning your rats into cards. Grave Pact is kind of one of them, and this is certainly another one of them.
Yep, definitely. This is probably, what would I give this? I think you have to build around this to some degree. Like, just, well, maybe not. What do you think? Would you just put this in a deck without creatures that make multiple bodies?
I wouldn't. I'd assume this isn't going to be played in like your blue-red decks,
right?
If you've got a bunch of spells,
but if a deck with like 15 creatures, let's say.
Yeah, like some of them.
Right. Yeah, it's a lower tier playable if you're not, you don't have a bunch of fodder. It's basically, if you don't have a bunch of fodder, it means your opponent's removal spells are slightly more annoying for them to cast. And your opponent also has to worry about just looking at their life total and saying, well, my life total is whatever, how many creatures they have, minus my life total, essentially. Or sorry, the opposite way around. And I think that if you have like a black-red deck, this card is just close to a bomb.
I was going to give it like a C.
Oh, okay. I was going to give it like a Synergy B+. Like, build around Synergy B+.
Kind of similar. Yeah.
Aggravated Assault, 2 in a red for a rare. 3 red, untap all creatures you control. If it's a main phase, weird ruling. If it's a main phase, there's an additional combat phase followed by an additional main phase. Activate only as a sorcerer. So you get another main phase, another combat, and that's just so much mana for that. Not worth it. Another F.
Yeah, some combo potentials, but yeah, not worth it.
Mana Flare, 2 in a red for a rare. Whenever a player taps a land for mana, that player adds 1 mana of any type that land produced. Another F. This affects both players too. If it affected just you, that'd be great, but it does not do that. Shared Animosity, 2 in a red for a rare. Whenever a creature you control attacks, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for each other attacking creature that shares a creature type with it. So the idea is rats.
This is one of those cards I talked about yesterday when they spoiled Ratcatcher Trainee and people thought there was going to be just like rats everywhere.
Right.
And I don't think it's panned out enough to make this card playable.
No, I don't think so either. There's not just like a bunch of rats running around. And even if you do have a good number of rats, it means they trade up. Like, it's definitely going to be effective, but it's not just like, oh man, I'm really doing it. So, D?
I wrote F. I could be convinced to change it to like a D. There's like a bunch of knights. You could maybe do knights, but
I imagine.
I wrote F.
Yeah, that's a fair grade. Like, I don't take any umbrage with that. I think that there's gonna be decks where you happen to have enough where this card was like an okay playable, but I don't think you're ever actively looking for it. Blood Moon, another F here. Mythic, non-basic lands or mountains. Just nope, not for us. Repercussion, 1 red for a mythic. Whenever a creature is dealt damage, Repercussion deals that much damage to that creature's controller. Probably just another F. Yeah, no, it's too finicky. Yeah, not into that.
I'd rather just have a creature that deals damage instead of this thing.
Leyline of Lightning. It's the 4 mana, got the Leyline text. You can put it on the battlefield if it's in your opening hand, and the effect is, whenever you cast a spell, if you may pay 1, and if you do, the Leyline deals 1 damage to target player or planeswalker. Again, just not good enough. Giving all your spells kicker 1, hitting your opponent's not a strong effect. Sneak Attack. This is a funny one. 3 in a red for a mythic. Red mana. You may put a creature card from your hand on the battlefield. That creature gains haste. Sacrifice the creature at the beginning of the next end step. So you're gonna sneak in your Moon Cavalier thing, right? The big white crater of Behemoth. That's the idea.
That's an Ethan dream more than a Mark dream.
Definitely. I think we're just gonna give this a responsible F2.
Yep.
Fiery Emancipation, 3 red, red, red at a rare. If a source you control will deal damage to a permanent or player, it deals triple that damage to that permanent or player instead. So pretty similar.
We saw this
Yeah, go ahead.
in the one with Convoke in March Machines, and it was better than expected. I think this is worse than having Convoke.
Because even in March of the Machine with that card, you had to be a deck with like a lot of Rouse reinforcements, right? Like you needed to be turboing it out. Right, yeah. So this isn't an F, and I did play the set this was M21 or 20, and it was okay. It was a card you would put in your deck sometimes. Like I'm gonna give this one a D, basically. Like you could play this. It's not the worst, but it's not a great card.
Yeah, I wrote D-. So
Hardened Scales. Moving on to green rares here. Single green mana for a rare. If one or more +1/+1 counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/+1 counters are put instead. I don't think there's a density of those, right? I don't think you can cobble together a deck with enough counters in the set. Nope. F. Prismatic Omen. 1 green for a rare. Lands you control are every basic land type in addition to their other types. Just another F. If this drew a card or something, yeah, sure, but where it's just too low of an effect for not getting your card back or anything. Leyline of Abundance, 2 green, or green leyline here. It's the rare. Whenever you tap a creature for... Can we just give it an F? I'm not even going to read it. I'm just going to give it an F because I know we're not going to play this one either. So it just makes your mana dorks better if you have a lot of mana dorks. Nature's Will is our next one. 2 green for a rare. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, tap all lands that player controls and untap all lands you control. It combos with Aggravated Assault because you just get infinite combat. But I don't think this is a card you should play, right?
Nope.
Okay, cool. Just a big old string of Fs here. This one's interesting, though. Defense of the Heart. 3 and a green for a mythic. At the beginning of your upkeep, if an opponent controls 3 or more creatures, you sacrifice Defense of the Heart, you search your library for 2 creatures, and put them on the battlefield and shuffle.
Yeah, this one is going to be hard to get around.
Yeah.
Like, even if you play it when your opponent has 0 creatures on the battlefield, they're going to be put in a really tight spot.
Right, it's very damned if you do, damned if you don't here. Like, your opponent's attacking you with some creatures. What are you going to do? Not play creatures? I guess you can manage it. Like, it's kind of a mini game, right? You manage it, so it's like, how can I survive / pressure my opponent well enough with just 2 creatures? That's kind of the mini game you're playing. And I actually haven't played with this card before, to be honest. And so I think that it's going to be interesting to play that game. I'm going to give it the grading of this is probably just going to be wrong, to be honest, because like it's hard. It ranges very largely, and the better the creatures in your deck, like if you have a good 5 and 6 drop to get, cool. If you're getting like a 4 and a 3, it's fine, but you winning that mini game, that's not the best payoff. So I want to give it like a B-. I don't know, maybe that's too high. What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to give it like a wishy-washy C+. Yeah. I think I'll just go C+.
Okay, cool. Parallel Lives, Mythic, 3 and a green. If an effect we create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many tokens instead. I don't think there's a lot of tokens, but I don't think quite enough for this card to be good. It does make copies rolls. I didn't think about that, but I think still I'm not into it.
A lot of, like, you think about how many things you have to copy to get 4 mana's worth, and that's not happening the turn you cast this.
Another kind of variant of this, Primal Vigor, 4 and a green for a rare. If 1 or more tokens would be created, twice that many of those tokens are created instead. But that's both players. That's the symmetrical effect. And then it has a second ability. It does the same thing, but with +1/+1 counters. F. We gave the last one an F. This one's an F too. Unnatural Growth. This one's not an F. 1 green. So 4 green. Heavy cost. Rare. At the beginning of each combat, double the power and toughness of each creature you control until end of turn. So this is a pretty recent one. We saw this in Midnight Hunt. And while it is very, very hard to cast, it's a solid effect.
There's also a lot of like mana filtering things in this set to make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, it's probably going to be easier to cast this card. And also, I think that green probably likes this card more in this set than Midnight Hunt, because green is a little more aggressive in this set than it was in Midnight Hunt. If you can cast this card, it's like a B.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you got to be You got to be able to cast it. You have to be very close to mono green, basically, if not mono green. And then
We're gonna be with the assumption that the stats will be worse because people will play it when they can't cast it.
yes, that's a great point. Our last rare here is Doubling Season. It's a mythic, actually. 4 and a green. They just said we had to put 3 of these effects on the bonus sheet. It's as an effect you would create 1 or more tokens. You make twice that many instead. That's just you. And then it does that same thing with counters as well. We're gonna say the same thing here, just not a density of enough of that kind of stuff. So we had a little bit of a mix-up as we were going through this, and we actually hit on the rares before we did the uncommons. So now we're getting to the uncommon part of the bonus sheet, going back to white, and we're gonna have more to talk about. You just heard a 10-minute long FFFFF fest, and we're not gonna be having that many Fs for the uncommons here. So our first uncommon here, Griffin Airy, 1 and a white at uncommon. All these are uncommons. I'm not gonna read out the rarities. At the beginning of your end step, if you gained 3 or more life, create a 2/2 white Griffin creature token with flying.
Yeah, so when this was spoiled, people thought, oh, food triggers this, but there's not really any white food, and there's not a ton of it in green or black.
Well, like like you said to me, there's also artifacts though.
Yeah, but you really want, you need to trigger this, at least every, a couple times, right?
I think you have to make 2. I think you have to make 2 Griffins to be happy, because yes, like a 2-mana 2/2 Griffin flyer would be good, but you're not getting that. You're that's on layaway basically, all right? You're spending some time. So to get to that 2 activations or 2 triggers, you have to have 9-10 things that trigger this. So it's a good card. If you could, obviously if this was happening every turn, it'd be great. But you really do need a density of food to make this work. So I'm gonna say build around C+ or B-, but it's not gonna come together very often.
Yeah, sure, that's fine. Build around anything that's not like a build around B or higher though it's one set of every 50 drafts you're gonna see that type of thing.
What about splashing this in black green? What do you think about that?
Yeah, maybe. I think it's pretty easy to splash it.
Yeah.
I could see it happening.
Yeah.
That's probably a better spot for it, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe that's actually how we're framing that, and it's more of a splash card. Next up, we've got Intangible Virtue, 1 and a white. Creature tokens you control get +1/+1 and have vigilance.
Yeah, weird to give vigilance to your rats that can't block anyways.
Right.
And the knights already have vigilance.
Right. So it's really just +1/+1.
Yeah, I don't think it's great.
No,
we saw a 2-mana creature that did this.
Yeah.
And much better. I think this is like a D-.
Yeah, so we've been saying there's enough tokens to do X thing or Y thing. It's not just it's gonna be different. Your threshold for how many things you need in the set for doing the thing is gonna be different on different effects. On this one, since it's not this over the top effect, it's just boosting them. You have to have a lot. On some other ones, when it's if you have a token, do a thing. That's not, you don't need as much, right? So yeah, I'm gonna give this a D as well.
Correct.
Grasp of Fate, 1 white. It's enters the battlefield. For each opponent, exile up to 1 non-land permanent that player controls until a Grasp of Fate leaves the battlefield. So it's just a hard to cast Oblivion Ring, basically. The opponent stuff is just commander text.
Yeah, not unplayable though. It's still gonna be solid.
Oh, it's good.
It's a C.
Oh, I was gonna give it a little bit higher grade. It's just a hard to cast O-Ring. You'd give hard to cast O-Ring a C?
The one I'm trying to remember the most recent one I thought that wasn't as good as I expected.
We haven't had one in a while.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really cutting this, but I don't want to go into the B range.
No. I was just gonna give it a C+.
Okay, sure.
Cool. Knightly Valor. Here's another pretty good one. 4 and a white for an aura. When Knightly Valor enters the battlefield, you make a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance, and the enchanted creature gets +2/+2 and has vigilance.
Yeah, this was great in Return to Ravnica. Things have gotten stronger since then. So in your Discord, this card has become somewhat of a meme,
right,
which I think is a little harsh because I don't think it's unplayable.
No, I don't either. I think especially in a set that cares about enchantments, this was it was a common back in the day, and they upgraded to an uncommon somewhere along the way in some set, and it was actually notably worse the second time around, and that was a 2015 2016 set, but it was still solid. I wasn't gonna cut the card from my deck. I would give Knightly Valor a C. Would you give it
I
a
was gonna go.
Sorry?
I was gonna go C minus.
Okay, yeah, that's fair enough. It's if you haven't played with the card, it's a lot more. It's really the vigilance on +2/+2 and putting that on like a 3/3 is more annoying to deal with than you might think, and especially because it comes along with a 1/1 friend. Okay, moving on to the blue ones. Curiosity. We mentioned this one yesterday. A single blue aura, enchant a creature. Whenever enchanted creature deals damage to an opponent, you may draw a card.
Yeah, and there's a few cards that combo with this between the trebuchet or the catapult, like Ginger Brute, 1/1 flyers, or just having like the biggest thing on the board. So I think this is going to be a good set for Curiosity.
Yeah, I think so too. I think there's like you appreciate cheap evasive creatures, of course, is the combo like we mentioned with the pinger wall thing that like it untaps whenever you cast a spell. You do get to draw a bunch of cards if you can machine gun that. So it's definitely a synergy card. You don't just put this in any blue deck. You need to be a creature based deck with some amount of evasion. If you've got that, I'd probably give this a C+.
Yeah.
Cool. Compulsion is next. 1 in a blue. It's got 2 abilities. 1 in a blue, discard a card to draw a card. So you're looting. 1 in a blue, sacrifice Compulsion, draw a card. So you get to cash it in at some point.
Yeah, this is harkening back to the set I started with back in Odyssey.
Oh, nice.
Which was a key pillar to one of the most insanely infuriating standard decks of all time.
What was this in? What deck?
What standard deck?
Yeah.
It was Cunning Lake.
Oh, right. Yeah, okay. And this was a solid card limited too, right? Or was it not?
Yeah, at the time, but I don't think it is anymore.
No, I don't think so either. It's just too much mana to do nothing. So yeah, I'm gonna give this one an F.
Yeah.
Hatching plans. Here's the big one. We were talking about it all yesterday, and this is what you want to sacrifice to your bargain cards. Hatching plans is 1 in a blue. When Hatching plans enters the battlefield, when Hatching plans is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, draw 3 cards.
So the scale for this depends on how much bargain you have.
Mm-hmm.
It's
a 0 sometimes, right? Just like straight up, you're never going to play it, but I think you should take it highly still.
Yeah, I almost want to give it like a build around A minus.
Yeah, that's a pretty good grade. Because if you were ever just paying 2 mana to draw 3, you'd be like, well, that card's busted. And sometimes you are going to effectively do that. So yeah, I give it a build around A minus too.
Great.
Spreading Seas. This is 1 in a blue for an aura. Enchant land. When Spreading Seas enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and the enchanted land is an island. So you get to either fix yourself, or for double blue, or hope to mana screw the opponent, essentially.
Yeah, and the idea of cantrip, maybe screw your opponent for a few turns in the early game, and then late game when their mana's good, you can just bargain it away. I think this card's going to be fine.
Yeah, totally fine. I would just give it a C.
Yeah, I think C is fair.
C for Spreading Seas. We got Vampiric Rites moving on to black here. Single black mana. It has an activated ability. 1 in a black, sack a creature. You gain a life and you draw a card.
Yeah, I actually forgot that we do have another sack outlet for the.
True.
There's 2 different uncommon active treasons,
Yeah,
right?
that's a good point.
So with that, I think it becomes good. If you don't have the steal and sack, I'm not that excited about this.
Yeah.
Am I wrong there?
No. This was like there was when this card was first printed in Battle for Zendikar, there was like a life gain deck, and you actually cared about that trigger quite a bit. And there was also a lot of fodder, Eldrazi spawn tokens, but we don't have any of that. We have rats certainly, but we don't care about the life gain. I think this is going to be an interesting card because even in your red black decks, you're not actively going to want to sacrifice your rats that often, right? Like there's just like you cast your 3 mana card that comes in with a 2/1 to make a rat. How often are you going to spend 2 mana in the mid game to sack that rat draw card? Pretty infrequently. So I think you're right. I think you either have to be like this grindy black deck that has a lot of tokens, or you're stealing and sacking. And if you're one of those things, it's like a C+.
I was just going to give it like a D.
Okay, sure.
Considering how infrequently it's going to be played.
I think for a lot of these cards, the grade's going to matter a little bit less than some of the main deck cards.
Yeah.
We're talking about use cases more so than on average, right? Or you're really pointing these towards when you're going to use them. Dark Tutelage, 2 in a black. At the beginning of your upkeep, reveal the top card of your library, put that card into your hand. You lose life equal to its mana value.
So funny in a set with like Necro as well.
Yeah. Do you like this
but
more or
I
less than
think this
Necro?
one's just. I think this is worse.
Yeah. At least with
I
Necro, you're jumping through hoops and you're getting a huge payoff. This one's slow and yeah, yeah. I think this one's
yeah, like
probably F.
even with bargaining this, I still think I'm just gonna give it an F.
Yep, I agree with that.
Okay.
Stab Wound, another banger from your Pro Tour run. It's 2 and a black for a aura. Enchanted creature gets -2, -2, but also at the beginning of the upkeep of enchanted creature's controller, that player loses 2 life.
Yeah, another RTR card back with Knightly Valor, and people figured out pretty quickly that you actually like don't want to kill the creature with this.
Yep.
Unless it's a pack rat, in which case, great.
Right.
But yeah, this was one of the top uncommons back in the day because you shut off your opponent's creature and then you basically just killed them over the space of how many turns it cost them to lose that much life.
Yeah, it was even a common back then, I'm pretty sure.
Yep.
So the thing about this card though is you want to be putting it on a like mid-sized creature, because what's going to happen is if you put this on a 6/6, let's just say, it was, going to the extreme, they're just going to attack you with a 4/4 every single turn, and you're going to be like, well, I don't want to block that, and right, and also you can't be attacking on the ground too much, because if you do, you just put this on their thing, and it's like, all right, well, I'm just going to chump block, right? It's fine. You cast the removal spell. You essentially cast one of those, like, Frogify effects where it's like, okay, cool, you take my thing out of commission, but I get a chump block, and that's not good. So you want to be like a black deck that's grindy, attrition-y, and not playing to attack on the ground that much. If you're that, what would you give it?
I think a lot of things have to line up now. I want to give it like a C-.
Yeah, I would give it that too. I do think it's gotten meaningfully worse.
Yeah, okay.
Going to red now. Dragon Mantle. Single red mana. It's an aura. It says, when Dragon Mantle enters the battlefield, you draw a card, and the enchanted creature has red. This creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So you give the creature fire breathing.
Yeah, 1 mana cantrip that can be bargained away is already pretty good. And then if you have like that red-white mythic that searches for an aura, here's another target that I forgot about.
Yeah.
And then fire breathing occasionally, like we talked about cards like Gingerbread and 1/1 flyers. It could just be a game ender. So I think this card's solid.
Yeah, no, I do too. I think in most red decks, like I don't even think this is like you need to have something going on. You mentioned a few things that make it a little bit better, but I would just give Dragon Mantle C+.
Yeah, that's where I was as well.
Impact Tremors is up next. 1 or red for an enchantment. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, Impact Tremors deals 1 damage to each opponent.
Not interested.
No, don't think so either. This is a card that I know a lot of people, when it was first printed, this was Dragons of Tarkir, a lot of people kind of hyped up, because it's the kind of card that when you die to it, you're like, oh, that was so good. Like, I couldn't do anything. They're making all these things. But too much of the time, like, you draw this either on, too late when you've emptied your hand, or even just like casting on 2 is not that good. You rather just cast a 2-mana 2/2 so much of the time. That's the real problem. Even with rats, like I know like a lot of people are gonna be like, oh, okay, like, but I have rats. You'd have to have a ton of rats to really make this a playable card. Like to make it for all the things I just talked about aren't so good about it. So gonna give this one like a D- kind of, because I can see myself playing this card at some point, but it's not a card that even in the deck you would think it would go on. I think you have to be super far in that direction for it to be good.
Okay, I'm just gonna give it an F.
Sure. Ray Bombardment. This is a 2 and a red enchantment. Whenever a creature you control with power 2 or less attacks, Ray Bombardment deals 1 damage to the player or planeswalker that creature is attacking. Similar.
Yeah, Rise of Eldrazi was the set that made this really pop off, and again, times have changed, but I still think this is. We talked about making your rats relevant, and I do think this does that.
Yeah, and this is much different than Impact Tremors because it's repeatable. It doesn't care. You can draw it late and play it. It's still going to do its thing. So a lot of things I just said about like you have to be pretty far in the end of going deep are true for this one too. Though I think it's a better payoff. So I think if you're very rat heavy, it's probably like a C. Maybe C+.
Okay, I wrote D+.
D+?
Do you want to go C?
I was gonna go C. Yeah, I was gonna go C. But again, I think a lot of these cards are gonna have lower win rates than you might expect, because they look. I just described a situation where it's like you really have to be sure that your deck is doing this, and I know not everybody's gonna feel that way, and people are just gonna want to try out cards and stuff. So just be careful about these cards. Utopia Sprawl. Moving on to green. Home stretch here. Single green mana for an aura. Enchants a forest. As Utopia Sprawl enters the battlefield, you choose a color. Whenever the forest is tapped for mana, its controller adds an additional mana of the chosen color. So it's a 1 mana ramp spell.
Yeah, and that you can bargain away later as well.
Yeah.
I mean, all of these you can because they're all enchantments, but like just reminding people that it's different than the set that it was last in for context, I think is worth it. So I'm interested in Utopia Sprawl.
Yeah, I think this is actually really, really strong. You have to be a heavy green deck, so you can't just enchant anything. I guess if you have the green mana, you're going to be able to cast it, but the point still stands, right? You need to make sure you have green in your opening hand. But this is, we don't usually get 1 mana accelerants in most limited sets, right? And this isn't a Llanowar Elf because it can't attack and block when it wants to, but it makes up for that somewhat by the fact that you can bargain it away and it makes any mana or any color. So I would start high on this. I'm actually just going to give it a B-, I think.
Okay, I wrote C+.
Okay, yeah. So, yeah. Ground Seal. This is an enchantment. I keep saying like this is an enchantment, and then I keep going. I'm not going to say it again because they're all enchantments, but
it can be bargained.
Yeah. So this is enters the battlefield, draw a card. That's the most relevant part of this text because it says cards in graveyards can't be the targets of spell or abilities. And there's not enough like enchantment matter stuff in the set that I would just play 1 in a green cantrip enchantment. So I think it's just an F.
An F? I don't know if I'm gonna go that low. Like if you're gonna play your 5 mana 6/6 trample gain 3s, you need to have.
Oh yeah, okay. You know
water.
What? You know what? Bargain. Yeah. Once again, I forgot about bargain for a second, so I think you're right about that.
I just said it.
I know you did. I know, and that's why we're like collectively like 8-9 hours into the set review. Yes. Yeah. So what do you want to get this one then? I agree. It's better than an F.
Like a D+.
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay.
Season of Growth. This is a cool one. 1 in a green. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you scry 1. Whenever you cast a spell that targets a creature you control, you draw a card. So another card that was printed in one of the core sets, M20, I think, and kind of a bit of a sleeper actually. It's not an amazing card, but I think a lot of people dismiss this as just straight an F. It's a build around. You have to have enough cards that target combat tricks, auras, stuff like that. But you're gonna have that in this set a good amount of the time. And your creatures enter the battlefield and you scry 1. That's not nothing either. So if you have a deck with 6, 7, 8 ways to target things, maybe a little more than that, like 8, 9. That's actually probably in the higher end of things. So maybe back down to 6, 7. I would play this card. I think adventures that have combat tricks are going to go a long way with getting enough targeting things in your deck. But this is a solid build around.
Yeah, I'm still gonna give it like a D+. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna give it a C, like C build around, but
okay.
Yeah, just wanted to talk it up for people that maybe haven't played with the card before. And we've got our very last card here of the set review, Garruk's Uprising. 2 and a green for enchantments. I did that on purpose this time, I swear. When Garruk's Uprising enters the battlefield, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, you draw a card. Creatures you control have trample. And whenever a creature with power 4 or greater enters the battlefield under your control, you draw a card.
Yeah, this thing's not that hard to enable, but I don't think the deck that has it is where you want to cast this.
It's kind of the problem, right? Like you'd kind of be aiming for like this green-red mid-range deck with big things, but I think that's just going to be less effective than a green-red aggro deck. And I don't like these style of cards generally. I think a lot of people really do like them. Like they tend to get taken pretty highly. I'm sure the Elsa on this card is going to be pretty high actually. I think they often underperform relative to how good they actually end up being. This is the best one we've seen though. Like this is maybe in your kind of blank period of playing. There was a period where like it felt like every set they printed some variant of you have a 4-power creature, you draw a card somehow. Giving trample, giving cantripping on entering makes this one better. So I think this one I would kind of give in the same category as Season of Growth, like good build around if you have enough of that stuff, but it's not, it's not a super high pick. I would give it a C.
Okay. Cool. All right, and that's it.
That's it. Yeah, our reasonably long set review. Hopefully everybody listening felt like they got something out of it. They learned the cards a little bit more, and like I mentioned at the top of the set review, I really think that's what set reviews are the best at doing, just getting you familiar with the cards, maybe hearing some ideas from me and Mark that you hadn't thought of yourself, confirming some suspicions, denying some thoughts you might have had. And, like I said yesterday, if you have any thoughts about, hey, I think Mark and Alex are off about this card, I like it more, or I like it less, feel free to leave a comment, leave a in the YouTube comments or the Limited Level Up Discord. Mark, anything that you want to leave the folks with before we pack up?
Yeah, like overall thoughts. I think the set's going to be pretty fun. I think there's like bonus sheet sets typically have a pretty good batting rate, and this one hopefully will stay the same. Also, for those waiting for Alex to post a 17 lands tier list, the letter gradings we have given cards will be posted onto your Discord within the next 30-40 minutes. So for those people who just can't wait to get their teeth into some of the card ratings and don't have time to listen to 9 hours of content, that will be your fastest way to get the synopsis on what we discussed today and yesterday.
Yes, and for those who are looking for that 17 lands tier list, I always post it on Twitter whenever I get around to it. It always comes out before the set actually comes out. I also post it in my Discord, so you will be alerted some way if you're at all in the space of my content. And I put that out usually after pre-release weekend, just so I can get a bit more updated thoughts on the cards. Yeah, let's pack it in from there. Mark, I'm gonna say once again, I always thank you so much for generously donating your time here. Is very, very kind of you. Such a great set review partner. You bring awesome insights, and I'm looking forward to the next one, and I'm sure everybody listening is as well.
Thanks for having me, and until next time.
All right. See you, everybody. Bye.